stuff together.
Yes, we can.
Mind if we use these outlets?
Sorry?
I can use these.
If anyone needs to plug in a
Oh, yes. I kind of like go adapter, but it stays with
yeah, actually, you have enough.
We're bringing great. That's like caning for every violation.
This isn't the case for the custom hub bit. Something that shock you that's has everything.
Yeah.
No, exactly.
Oh, hey.
Hey,
EG.
good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
I think he dropped up.
Is it one or is it
Monahan? I feel like it's kind of cool outside. We could do the windows.
Yeah,
Haven't had this as a
it definitely is. I'm really hoping the aircon catches up soon, but
But we're only gonna get more bodies in here.
yeah. Let's see. So we are now live on YouTube for anyone who feels nervous in front of the camera.
Start panicking now.
Yeah, exactly.
You just come from LA, right? Yeah, well, I arrived last night. Oh, glad we have a bar for you. It's called the Bletchley.
Yeah.
What do you mean a bar? Like drinking bar?
Yeah.
Drinking bar. I promise you will like,
Really?
It is very cool.
No.
like you have to solve puzzles and you get your drinks in accordance to your preferences on the puzzles.
Okay. I like the.
And it's
I might like that.
And it's like World War II themed.
Okay. Now I'm a little less attracted.
World War II code breaker
World War
thing.
II is
World War II
traumatic
code
event. Like I don't want to be traumatized, you know.
Well, you can
Or
be
think about
involved
traumatic
in
things.
helping end it, you know.
You're helping end it. So,
Oh,
like you're the hero of the story while you're
I'm
getting
like
inebriated.
the Alan Turing and the.
That's exactly it.
You're tracking him.
Yeah.
There's a bar across the street.
Really? Oh.
You could have done it. One more.
Really good. Camera.
It'll be the conference of Vlad.
For the back of Vlad's head. Yeah, I'm sure everyone wants to see that. I could take my ponytail off and put it back on again.
Like do it on a regular schedule. Fine.
Yeah, you're gonna love that.
The number of teen girls watching the stream skylines.
So for anyone who does want to join the stream to present and so forth, the URL is in the Getter channel. Please try not to, please disable camera and mic before joining, otherwise we'll get a lot of feedback probably.
Do you want to tweet out the link to the public viewable?
I have.
Cool.
So how many people are from King's College? I heard there are like 3 of you from here. No? I didn't arrive there.
Nothing with organizing people and getting them up. I assume. Hey,
I like your t-shirt.
thanks. Shorter hair than last time.
Shorter hair than last time?
Yeah.
Damn,
we did
I gotta cut it a
the
few times.
meetup.
But still trying to get it longer, I don't know.
There is a, yes, the cloud, also the cable you sit in the middle of the room has USB chargers. If you
I'm pretty happy with this. Hello.
Hey. Hey.
How are you? Sorry.
Oh.
So good to see you.
Yeah. Oh, I'm Japanese translator of myself.
Yeah.
No. Oh, okay.
Let's create an account. Oh no.
Apparently we don't get away to make this full screen, but I guess this will be close enough.
They want so much personal information
I'm Taylor.
for this cloud thing.
Yeah, I just registered as Abraham Lincoln. They were fine with that.
Yeah, sure, but even I was putting fake stuff in there, but there's so many fields that are required.
Yes, and I don't know about you, but I can't remember Abraham Lincoln's birthday, so.
Yeah, but you know, they probably aren't chicken.
No, probably not.
Just the first 1980.
Yeah, exactly. He's younger than you think. Right, I think we've got more or less a quorum, so I guess we may as well start. Welcome to the first ENS technical workshop, and thank you everyone for coming. I really appreciate it. I'm Nick Johnson, as you undoubtedly know. If you're going to tweet about it, #ENS Workshop, or let us find them all. I thought before we go into any details and so forth, it would help to go around the room and if everybody can give a one-sentence description of what their name is, who they are, and maybe what they hope to get from the workshop. That would be great. I'll start. I'm Nick Johnson, developer for the Ethereum Foundation, lead on ENS, and I ambitiously hope to get enough sorted that we can start planning a permanent registrar for ENS by the end of the weekend, which should be cool.
Hi, I'm Makoto. I created a tab called block party, so like something like this. If people decide to come, you bet the deposit. If you don't come, you lose. If you come, you share the deposit. So that's what I do. And also, I organize a non-noisy code up where like developer gathers and they just talk about code. And yeah, I don't use ENS much apart from I have a couple domains. So like today I'd like to learn a lot, and if there's anything I can help.
My name is Seki from Tokyo, and I have been working for IBM only for technology, technical and business both side, and now I'm working for myself on my startup companies, and I'm now working on several projects, including my Ethereum wallet, Japanese translation with Tera and Kevin. And I hope the Ethereum name will match handy for language, Japanese or Chinese language, which utilize many characters. And I hope good advancement on this workshop for the direction. Thank you.
My name is Dan Finlay. I work on Metamask. I did our ENS integration, and I think, like Nick, I'm just looking forward to seeing where ENS is headed from here.
My name's Virgil. I work for the foundation. I'm spending most of my time thinking about how to make ENS integrate with ICANN.
Yeah, my name's Jared. I work on Status, mobile Ethereum client. We're looking to resolve ENS names and also use ENS for usernames. I like to sort of get clarity or some basic specification how we should best resolve this honorific sort of names.
Hi, my name is Yudi. I'm from Tel Aviv. I'm the CTO of LocalCoin, the company, software company behind Bank Protocol. We obviously use ENS, and generally it's very interesting to me to see where ENS is headed, and also since we're so heavily invested in the platform, I think ENS is one of the more the biggest debt, if not one of the biggest debts we have today, if not the biggest one. And just I want to see where it's headed, and I also want to meet you guys. That's it.
Dave, I'm from, well, I live in Acapulco, I'm from Indianapolis. I bid on a number of ENS names, and I don't really have any special expertise or credentials, but I just wanted to meet everybody and get involved in some capacity and learn as much as possible.
My name is Dick Olson. I work for Pfizer Pharmaceuticals here in London. Digital engineer, everything digital web. Here to see how we can contribute to an important piece of infrastructure.
My name is Dan Olson. I work for Consensus, and I'm currently reviving an alternative contract language, which was used to re-implement next Solidity version of the registry in LLL. And I'm looking to meet everyone and see where everything's going.
I'm Jim McDonald. I've been involved in and around cryptocurrencies for quite a while now. I've been involved in technology, generally speaking, and most importantly, technology infrastructure for 20 odd years. So I've been around when DNS was starting up and sort of stuff like that. Main focus for me is looking at how ENS can be basically productionized, turned into a system that everyone can use, that is friendly and easy to use. And ideally, my sort of idea is that addresses should go away. We should stop using hex streams. So obviously that's what ENS is there for, and that's the big thing, but it's very rarely used in reality today. You look at people doing ICOs, people don't like the idea of using ENS because they're worried about things like homograph attacks, and people are just unsure about it in general. So yeah, it's really seeing how we can move ENS to a state where it becomes as common as the main names are today.
Hi, my name is Vlad Chalipo. I run Crypto Compare, and I co-founded it. And I'm here to see, similar to Jared, when we can use ENS for our 200,000 registered users and how to give them ENS access, enable it for them, and help push ENS in mass production direction.
I'm Floris. I'm here with Mark. We're from the Netherlands, and I'm here to learn more about ENS. I'm a psychologist, but interested in Ethereum part-time.
I'm Mark. I'm also from Groningen. I'm an investor in Ethereum, and also together we have a lot of ENS names. And I'm now building a company on holding these names. And I'm hoping to learn a lot about ENS and to contribute. So hopefully ENS comes success.
Hi, my name is Mark Jeftovic from Toronto, and I'm a legacy DNS guy. I can register. I founded easydns.com. And I have a bit of governance experience. I was on the CIRA board of directors for a few years, which oversees the .ca namespace. And I have a book in the works, which has been going on for years, which is going to be on O'Reilly. It's coming out on No Starch now, about the domain system, DNS policy, and how it interacts with DNS operations. I mentioned Bitcoin and Ethereum in it. Small sections, but it might be a bigger section by the time the book finally gets out. But so I'm really interested on how the legacy DNS system is going to intersect with blockchain. I'm really excited about blockchain, and I might be the token guy from the legacy DNS worlds today. So a few people want to say, when you get back, let's have lunch and talk about this. Tell us what you find out. So.
I'm Tom Kaiser. I work with Augur. Here, primarily, we're interested in the soft launch of Force Modem as we're approaching our launch as well, and how we can contribute and support and leverage ENS with the Augur itself as well.
Hi, I'm Vlad. I work on consensus protocols and mechanism design. With respect to ENS, I have a few goals, mostly around getting rid of and preventing potential for abuse, and also around fairness. And we haven't gotten to this the back bench.
Hi everybody, I'm E.G. Gawana, based in LA. working with Consensus on the Infera project. If you register the domain through the main ENS registrar site, you probably indirectly use Infera through Metamask. I'm here because we want to learn more about the ENS roadmap and how we can potentially help support it with community adoption.
Hi guys, I'm Patrick Victoria and I work at UCL. I'm mostly interested in the option protocol and the majors actually with the security ones.
Hey guys, I'm Taylor. I run my Ether wallet, and we have a lot to say about the ENS, I guess.
I'm Kevin, also from my wallet. And I actually almost don't use ETH addresses anymore at all. I also use names. That means my personal address has a resolver. My personal addresses all have resolvers. And now, like, enough people are implementing them look like a different construct. So you almost don't have to use ETH addresses anymore, which is awesome. Daniel, also from Ether wallet, helping build a more maintainable view.
Cool, thank you very much. Let's see. First, a few notes that everybody either already knows or doesn't want to listen to, I guess. But seriously though, actually, thank you very much to our sponsors, Status, who are here. Sorry. We have Status to thank for Chris Remus, who is still fighting his way through immigration at the moment at Heathrow, being able to make it to this workshop. Yeah, thanks, Chris, wherever you are. Aragon, who have kindly agreed to cover the catering for the event. Bancourt, sorry, I knew 100% I would screw this up. Bancourt, who are handling the catering for the event. Aragon, who are paying for tonight's social event at the brew pub nearby. And Crypto Compare, who are organising a dinner for us all tomorrow evening at a fantastic Greek restaurant. So thank you to all of them for the sponsor. So I thought I would start by giving a short overview of how ENS is, how the soft launch went, and sort of what we can learn from it. As of the end of July 2017, we had 180,000 names auctioned, and you can see the progression of them over time here. The blue line is bids, the red line is auctions that were finalised, and the green line is auctions that were started. Some small proportion of users started auctions and bid on them and revealed the bids, but haven't got around to finalising.
Sorry, green line?
I'm colourblind. What colour is it?
It's blue.
No, below the blue line.
There's orange and red.
Orange, thank you, the orange line. Surprisingly, the end of the soft launch period comes about here, not here where you might suspect. So interpretations for the sudden drop-off around the 15th to 16th of the month are welcome. Second all, 168,000 Ether have been deposited against names. These are deposits that are locked up for at least a year. Here we can see the deposits over time. The blue line, I'm pretty sure it's blue, represents Ether deposited per day, and the probably orange area represents the sum total of Ether deposited so far. The end of the soft launch period is unsurprisingly here. So the first interesting result that we haven't presented anywhere else yet is the quite significant drop-off in Ether deposited post-soft launch, which I predicted but wasn't sure about because generally a lot of the contentious names have been fought out during the soft launch period as soon as they became available. And since then, although, as you can see, the actual number of names auctioned stayed reasonably high for a while, the actual amount being deposited was decreased almost immediately. Mostly out of interest, a few of the largest bids and the most expensive names. The largest bids largely went for recognisable names, a lot of them being trademarks or popular gambling-related names. We're not sure about this one actually. It was a bid for 184,000 ether, but the name is not in the name hash pre-image dictionary, and it's not something obvious like consensus. The most expensive names were about an order of magnitude smaller than the bids, but still some of them quite significant in the millions of dollars locked up territory. And interestingly, pretty much all of them are generic names. None of the trademark names ended up going for quite such high prices.
Are the trademark names like by the trademark holders, or is it mainly
So
squatters?
it's difficult to say broadly. Consensus, for instance, that enormous bid was by consensus. They really wanted to make sure they got their name. Undoubtedly, there are a lot of squatted trademarks, but it's difficult to do a systematic assessment because you don't know who registers them.
But definitely, by looking at the gap of these orders of magnitude between the largest bids and the most expensive names, I would guess that the largest bids are made by people who want to reserve them and weren't competed with by squatters, except for at these kinds of amounts, or lower, actually lower than 3,000. So whoever competed with consensus on their name bid less than 3,000 ETH.
Yeah.
And so probably squatters weren't that successful against big brands with huge budgets.
And interestingly, dark market and open market only had a few bids each. They just happened to be a run-in of 2 or 3 people who were absolutely determined to spend a lot of money to get this name, and they got their wish. So prices and contention rates. Over the entire duration of the launch, we had an average of 35% contention rate for names that are in our pre-image dictionary and 7.2% for those that weren't. For a bit of background, the pre-image dictionary contains the 1 million most popular DNS names from courtesy Alexa as of April, and also an English dictionary. A contention rate here is any name that has more than one bid. So averaged out over the entire period of the launch, if you bid on a name that was in the dictionary, you had about a 35% chance of getting it without, a 35% chance of somebody else also bidding on it. And if you bid on a name that wasn't in the dictionary, you had about a 7% chance of somebody else also bidding on it. But from the graphs here, you can see that while the contention rate for names not in the dictionary stayed more or less constant throughout the entire period, and then dropped off at the end of the soft launch, the contention rate for names that were in the dictionary gradually dropped throughout the entire period. And I would contend that probably this is as a result of people initially being massively excited about snapping up a lot of names and then effectively being bored. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. So the important takeaway here is both that the contention rates are actually relatively low, even for names in the list, and they've got significantly lower since the end of the soft launch.
Just on that one?
Yeah.
Another reason for dropping might just be that people had locked their ether up if they'd succeeded. So
Yes.
that's something to consider, because obviously locking ether up may well be having that impact.
They spent all their money on early names and couldn't afford the later ones. Yeah, that's a reasonable interpretation.
Well, the names in the beginning were locked up right away. All of the names people thought about wanted were locked up right away.
But the soft launch means that they weren't all released right away.
Yeah, so names were released at random periods through the whole
That's why you
launch.
get the spikes.
Yeah, so the spikes are interesting. Because this is counting by number of auctions, it's difficult to attribute those to just 1 or 2 names that were suddenly popular, because they would still only show up as a single incident. So those days with spikes, for some reason or another, had a lot of people bidding on contentious names. The median price, again, for names that are and aren't in the dictionary over the entire period covered. If you wanted to buy a name that was in the dictionary, you'd pay an average of 0.05 ether. If you wanted to buy a name that wasn't in the dictionary, you pay an average of 0.02 ether. Again, this has changed a lot and is affected significantly by post the end of the soft launch. In fact, this is probably the most dramatic graph we have, because you can see that pretty much as soon as the soft launch ends, just about every name, including those that are in the dictionary, goes for the absolute minimum, with the occasional spike. This is the median of all auction prices for names that had more than one bid. If we included names that had only one bid, then this graph would just be flat the whole time through.
Is this on a daily basis?
Yes. So each data point represents a day, the median auction price for auction started on a given day. Also, interestingly, the median price is highly variable for names that are in the dictionary over the whole launch period. So my contention from the sum of these graphs is that one of the things we should consider here is whether an auction process is still relevant post-launch. Now that the contentious names have been auctioned off, if the majority of auctions are going for the base price and the majority of auctions are uncontested, should we consider a short-term replacement of the auction registrar with a simplified registration process and reserve auctions for when we release shorter names?
Was there a reserve list of names? Sorry, like could someone register Ethereum.eth?
There is no reserve list. The foundation deposited a significant amount of Ether to make sure it got Ethereum.eth. However, names shorter than 7 characters are currently prohibited, and part of that is because we expect that a lot of valuable semi-reserved names will be in that shorter list, and we wanted to take time to establish a process to figure out how to hand out those names and potentially set up a few processes before making them available. So the length restriction and how to make those short names available would be another good topic for discussion while we're here. This is another big figure, the amount of Ether lost in bids that were revealed. The graph at the bottom shows, based on the day that the bid was placed, what proportion of those bids were eventually never redeemed. The headline figure, 8,553 Ether, which actually adds up to only 0.3% of the total Ether deposited bids over the whole period. The figures at the beginning, as you can see, were quite alarmingly high, spiking as high as 7.5% on day 3-ish, but rapidly dropped off, I would say, due to a combination of things, improvement in UI and communication with users, better user knowledge, more platforms on which they can bid, and better support, especially from the MyEther wallet folks, in helping people reveal their bids if they're having problems with the DApp and so forth. So while I'm not exactly satisfied with anybody losing their Ether, I'm glad that the final figure ended up such a small proportion, and I'm quite satisfied how significantly it dropped after the initial launch period, personally. So ownership distribution, this is the big one about squatting and so forth. There are 8,556 accounts that own at least one ENS name. 123 of those, sorry, the top 123 of those, so that's 1.4%, own half the ENS names. And those 123 accounts paid 34,000 Ether, about 20% of the total deposited, in order to buy those 50% of the names. So they paid significantly under the going rate to acquire those names. And histogram here, note the log scale on the left of how many domains each account owns. The vast majority, over 6,000 to 8,000 owners, own between 1 and 5 names. And then there is a rapid drop-off of a very long tail of names that are owned, of accounts owning more and more names, all the way up to about 70,000 names.
So what's the x-axis?
The x-axis is number of names owned by an account, and the y-axis is number of accounts that own that group of names.
Okay.
So
is there kind of ranges, like 1 to 10, 11 to 20?
1 to 5, 5 to 11, 11 to 16, 16 to 20, and so forth. There's a mark for every 2 bars because of space.
Okay.
I recognise it's not the correct.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
But if
and this is one guy with the 17.
Yes, one person had. Sorry, yeah, 100 accounts. 100 accounts have between 221 and 17,000 names.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
That's the representation of a long tail.
Out of curiosity, who is that person?
I don't know. Maybe
we're not the 17,000.
Okay.
We're not the number one, but we're at the top.
So you're somewhere off the right side of this graph.
Yeah.
But
So,
not
just out of curiosity, what motivated you to buy so many names?
As an investment, mostly. Yeah. As an investment.
I'm going to put a pin in that for later because, yeah.
Just curious.
A bit about client adoption. Currently, we have support for ENS resolution in Metamask, MyEther Wallet, EtherScan, Leth, Status, Mist, Bitfinex, and Swarm. and coming support soon promised by Status. Sorry, did I say Status on the previous slide? I knew I had to screw this up. What was I supposed to say? Oh, Token, sorry. Coming support in Status, Kraken, hopefully, Shapeshift, and District OX. I really should have put text under these. And that's pretty much it for my lightning summary of the state of the ENS. We've got a couple, so for the agenda, we have a couple more talks about, so My Ether Wallet are giving a short talk on their experiences with the ENS launch and the ENS in general. Metamask are giving a short talk on their experiences with the ENS and the launch. And then the following time between 11 and lunchtime, or whatever time we have left, is scheduled to discuss sort of consequences of the launch, how things could have gone better, what we should think about in the future, and how this should affect future design decisions. After that, we've got lunch from 12 to 1, and then pretty much the whole afternoon for discussing dispute resolution, both because I figure we're going to need at least that long. Both, what sort of dispute resolution, if any, should we have? How should it work from a sort of a social and organisational point of view? And assuming we can come to any sort of agreement on that, how should this actually play out on a technical front, and what sort of avenues can we see to build a technical architecture for handling dispute resolution? Finally, 5 to 5:30 session planning for Saturday. I'm trying to keep the schedule for the workshop reasonably open. It's very much a discussion venue rather than a venue for lectures and so on. So I would like to solicit feedback from people explicitly at the end of the day about what they would most like to see discussed tomorrow. We have a bunch of potential both talks and workshops lined up, but I think it will be valuable to prioritise them based on what we've discussed in the day, what we feel was under-addressed, and what we think the most important outstanding things are. So we've scheduled half an hour at the end of the day for that. And then finally, from 6 o'clock onwards, you're all invited to or at least if you RSVP'd, you're all invited to the Temple Brew House, which is about 2 blocks away, for a social event. As mentioned before, Aragon have kindly agreed to provide some level of alcoholic beverages and some food for everyone. And it's a general sort of open social event for anyone who RSVP'd outside this workshop to come meet people and chat about ENS and other Ethereum topics. So that's it for me. Thank you again for coming, and let's get started.
Thank you.
I don't have any slides or anything.
That's okay. Do you want to take a seat here so the microphone can
Yeah.
hear you, or stand up as you prefer?
The bit.ly URL.
What?
The bit.ly URL for the stream.
It should be in the name registry channel on GitHub.
Also, is there a Wi? Did we just sign into Wi-Fi or?
Yes, it's cloud. The cloud. You have to sign up through a silly process, but
Okay, that makes sense. All right, so I'm Taylor. I do My Ether Wallet. For those who don't know, it's a client-side web wallet. We don't store any user information. We don't, you can run it offline if you want. Most people don't. Most people love going online and putting their private keys in, which we are working on ending quickly. The ENS. So the ENS, part of the difficulties that we had supporting the ENS they were not technical. They were all user-based. And one of the things that our wallet has always provided, and one of the reasons that so many people use it, is that we answer all the emails and tweets and Facebook messages and Skype messages and Slack messages and text messages and even the occasional phone call. So, we started out as a side project. It was literally me and my partner, and we just wanted to build an easy way to interact with Ethereum. We both had day jobs. We both worked them. We maybe averaged for the first year, we probably worked like 40 hours total the first year. Like we just built this little tool, and then it just sat. And then in 2016, we spent some more time on it. And then early 2017, if you remember, the price of ETH went from about 10, where it had been sitting for about 6 months, and then it hit 50, and then it hit 100, and then it hit 200, and then it hit 300, and then it hit 400, and it was just like bam, bam, bam. And that timing, so the timing of that price rise was really spot on, with ENS just hopping right in and starting the whole auction process. And so what we saw was massive user adoption, massive entry into the space by users really were not entering the space because they love Ethereum or because they're technical people or because they're devs, which is what we were familiar with. They were people who were trying to get in, trying to get rich, trying to get tokens, loving the ICOs, etc. And it was just different. Like, you know, we can't say like, oh, certain users shouldn't exist in the space because they're not X, right? Or they're only interested in X. You know, but I will say that we'd gotten really good at supporting developers and technical minded people. And we had set up our wallet that spoke to that. And it also spoke to an audience that had been around, you know, and even the new users that entered the space would use my Ether wallet, you know, and usually like if they're in the US, Coinbase my Ether wallet was like the normal thing. And then they were curious and they'd do geth, they would do mist, they would do parity, they would do all of the above. We would see, you know, basically we didn't have like a huge user retention pool. Like we'd bring people into the space and then they'd go off onto like the actual clients. Now we don't see that. Like users don't move on to anything, they stay with us and it's like crazy. You know, over that period of time, generally our support tickets went from about like 30 a day in December, January to over 1,000 a day. Like we were not prepared at all for this. So specifically about the ENS, like that kind of gives you an idea of this ecosystem. The ENS was, when was it finally?
The
The like first one, May 4th?
Was the official launch date.
So, May 4th, wow. When, you know, people were generally really excited about it, like we had been hearing from users, you know, that were curious about how they were going to register a name and what the process was going to be like, if we were going to be providing a UI for that, if they should start syncing Mist, et cetera, et cetera. We had actually developed the first 2 steps, so the auction, like the first 2 steps of the auction we had developed, but it hadn't really been like super tested. We knew it like worked well enough, but we were just kind of winging it. And then right before like the launch, we like stayed up all night. We were using testnet. We got everything really dialed in. And then I think like the very first names, we had a list of the that you provided. The list of these names, like silly just letter names that would be available in like that first half hour. So we stayed up all night, which was super fun, obviously. And you know, like when we bid on that first name and it worked, and like, you know, the feedback that it gave was like pretty good. And if I tried to bid too low, it was, you know, give you an error message. Like I was pretty proud about it. I was like, okay, we did okay. And then we woke up the next day and it was fine, and everyone was really excited. Everyone was bidding on names. And then we woke up the next day, and then that's when, like, pardon my French, but shit just hit the fan, and shit kept hitting the fan for about, I would say the first 2 weeks were the worst. I know Nick was not sleeping very much either. Me and Nick were on Skype probably all hours. You know, I lurked in the Metamask Slack, and same thing, people were just, I mean, we were not prepared for this. So I'm going to talk about some of the specific things we've learned. And keep in mind that while I do front-end development, I'm not like a hardcore programmer. And most of what I take away from experiences have to do with like users and product design and user experience and stuff. So that's where my insights are. So the first thing that we have to say, and this is like our internal kind of saying these days, is people are stupid. Like we say it probably 100 times a day. It's the answer to any support ticket ever. you just are like, you're stupid, and then you have to go and be like, okay, what did we do to create, like, did we do anything to create this situation? How can we prevent this situation in the future? Where did the misunderstanding happen? Did the misunderstanding happen because something like they don't understand like the underlying system? So people who, for example, like blame us when they can't get in on ICO, you know, it's an education problem. They think that we're like literally preventing them from, you know, buying these tokens. When in reality, you know, the network's overloaded, the servers are overloaded, they're not using enough gas, etc. It's not my personal fault that you did not get your token, I'm sorry. You know, so with the auction process, there was a lot of new terminology that we saw. So we saw, you know, like words like reveal, where I figured out what it meant and I understood it, but people really didn't understand why they had to reveal. They didn't understand like what the underlying sort of tech for the auction process is. They didn't understand that it was a blind auction somehow. Like I'm not quite sure how, but like really still to this day, like they're, you know, like, can I see how many other people bid and what they bid and, you know, all this stuff. And they also this was like one of the lesser problems, so I have it down on my list, but so surprising. Like the time sensitive stuff, like the fact that you need to do something and then wait a couple days and then do something and then wait a couple days, people, for some reason, there are people that just did not understand that, and they'll like email me today and be like, hi, I bid on a name like 3 months ago, I was just wondering what I do now. And like I said, it surprises me. So like we have like big red warnings everywhere. What are you doing? So I would say one of the bigger mistakes that we kind of had control over, we had a decision on, was the timing. We actually sped up the auctions for the actual launch, and I think that was a mistake because we were not prepared to provide the support. Like we really weren't. And it caused me personally like a lot of, like my husband literally found me outside on our patio, like chain smoking, crying, because like it was just like I've been answering these emails and people were like losing money and I like could help them but I couldn't, like, you know, that kind of stuff. It was like just, you know, the world was crashing down. And when you see the same thing over and over again, it doesn't take much to like trigger this like, holy crap, we failed so hard. But in reality, you have to keep in mind that, I don't know, like whatever you said, 185,000 names have been registered successfully, you know. So speeding things up, making things more time sensitive, you know, without knowing exactly like what users were going to do and have the most trouble with was definitely like, I would say a mistake today. If we could go back in time and do it over, I would say give at least like a week or so. Specifically between like the reveal or like the time you have to reveal. Because what we determined was that there were a couple different issues. People either didn't save the information, which was actually quite rare, because people, we have big red warnings, we're like, take a screenshot, we're like, copy and paste this. We say it over and over and over again. We say it before they bid, we say it after they place their bid. We say it on Reddit and Twitter, and like, you know, people learn pretty quickly. But what people would do is like, they have these spreadsheets, or they have these mechanisms that they're using to like keep track of all the names that they're going to bid on, or they're revealing, or they're going to finalize, or whatever it is. And they would get things mixed up. So, you know, I know Nick has saved some, I've saved some, where we're either brute forcing because they forgot their secret, or we're brute forcing based on their spreadsheet that they provide, that, you know, we basically go and try to find a hash for like, you know, okay, this is the name, but we don't know the amount that you actually bid. We don't know the secret. So we'll take all their existing ones and basically brute force it like that. And we've gotten, you know, in some of those. We didn't have any trouble. The secret, actually, we didn't have any trouble with it. people tended to either, like I said, like not save anything or get things mixed up. I would say that surprisingly enough, the bid amount, having to know that, that was the bigger one that people found a bit surprising. They didn't understand, and we put a lot of warnings. Like, I personally didn't understand it first either. Like, I was like, why do you have to know how much you bid? And isn't it the same as the amount of EP set? And then, we had to circle back and reread everything, and I was like, okay. So yeah, and then, that ties into the bigger sort of picture of people didn't understand what the reveal process was and why it was there. And so I think one of the biggest things that helped wasn't necessarily like us answering emails or like people learning. It was just like that general overall education about how this process worked and like how cool it was. Like, I mean, if you think about it, where this auction mechanism is like completely decentralized and secret, like really secret. And so when people sort of were able to put this like concept together that in order for something to be on the public blockchain but not public, this is the mechanism that's being used. When they got that and they grasped that core concept, everything else on top of that suddenly like fell into place. And so that's one thing that is a really big takeaway for me personally, like for the product itself, is that you can explain the top level of things and tell them to save their secret 1,000 bazillion times, but you're gonna have a better time if they understand why they need to save that secret, or why they need to save that bid amount, because then they'll just do it naturally. You don't have to put the red warnings up, they just understand it. Okay, and then I have to cover a couple of technical things. So there was a bug in one of the libraries that we used in the mechanism of how to handle strings versus hex. So as you know, like hex is OX, and then strings are strings. And ENS names are strings, except that the library would try to treat them as hex if they started with OX. And people would try to register an ENS name that started with OX. And I don't know like the details of the bug. Do you know? Is it?
I can't recall.
Yeah,
either.
I don't know exactly what it would do, but it was not good. You weren't bidding on the name you thought you bid on, I know that. And also it wasn't consistent. So this is like when we're talking about consensus, like on the top level, like everything gets really bad if like you have 3 people who support the ENS and like all 3 give you a different hash for a name. And that's why we need more support for everything, because that's where you find these little weird bugs,
Don't forget the issue where people were trying to reserve names with dots in them.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's on the list too. So the other one that was 100% our fault, and we should have seen that one. The hex thing, I didn't see coming, sorry. The dot thing, so there's a couple. So when you have like a validation library, right? It's going to be like, is this valid or not? And dots are valid. Like you can have an ENS name that is like Taylor.myetherwallet.e, right? But you can't bid on Taylor.myetherwallet. You can bid on MyEtherWallet, then MyEtherWallet becomes would become like a registrar itself, and then you bid Taylor or whatever. So the problem was that the initial, I think, week or so, if you could bid on Taylor.myEtherWallet because the validation library that we used was saying it was valid, because it was valid, but it's not like, we should have been using, what we're doing now is we're using 2 different validations. So we have validation for like when we resolve an ENS name to an address, and then we have validation for when you're bidding. And so when you're bidding, you can't have a dot, but when you are like trying to resolve a name on the front end, then you can have a dot. So there's like a lot of little things like this that sneak up on you, and it's, you know, partially due to like a young ecosystem and the fact that we're a small team, and you know, the fact that we're like basically writing the documentation as we go, and learning as we go. I'm hoping though, like as we move forward, especially now that like there's seriously a lot of users using it now, like especially our product. That's one of the things that we're, you know, not taking as lightly as we used to, just because there's a lot of people using our site.
Do you have numbers?
We don't. We've gone, I mean, our growth is like, we're like this, and then it's like that. Like, it's crazy. I think the best sort of graph that gives you an idea of like what we're going through is the ICO graph on Twitter, where it's like, there's like 4 slides. Have you seen this one?
No, sure.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I have. Yeah, I love that graph.
Yeah, so like you see like token card, like everyone, like, and you're like, oh man, those are big spikes in traffic. And then you click to the next slide, and like Bancor shows up and just like dwarfs everyone. You're like, man. And then you go to the next slide, and then like status is just like, and then Bancor is like this little baby right here. That's basically been our lives for the last like few months. Is like every time we're like, okay, we made it, we're okay. And then like some other like lurking giant, you know, appears. It's really like, it's quite unbelievable, honestly. Like I don't quite, I haven't fully processed like where we are right now and like how many people use our product. But I did have like sort of like a moment. We were in Austin and we went to the meetup there, and where were we? In Texas somewhere.
Dallas.
We're at the Dallas meetup. And we walk in, and like literally there's probably like 50 people, and they all have like My Ether wallet open on their computers. And I was like, oh my god, they're using our thing, they're using our thing. And they're like, yeah, like they're all Ethereum people, like they're here for the Ethereum meetup. And I'm like, no, but they're on our site, like that, we built that. And everyone's like, yeah, duh. So I don't know, like it's mind-boggling for me at least. I mean, we can talk more openly and you know, about specifics and users and stuff. I can like pull numbers for the support tickets if we want. Most of the support tickets we got were general confusion questions like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing at all. I mean, honestly, if you're interested in like seeing how users interact with Ethereum, our support inbox, like I wish I could just open source it, because it is just, you do not know your users until you read the support box. It's amazing. And then I would say the trouble revealing, you know, we have a pretty good, so we have tools that they can use themselves to basically try to like brute force themselves. We have a pretty good like walkthrough on how it works, and what steps they need to take and why they need to take them. You know, one of my hypothesis about the graphs that Nick was showing about the drop off, I actually think it's because the mentality of like the market for these names was at the beginning like, well, there's no risk. Like, we'll just throw our money in it, and then if we get the name, well, you know, the worst that happens is that in a year we get the money back. No worries. Like, I'll just throw all my money at it, and then instead, what happened was like, you know, even people that, let's say they bid on 500 names, it just takes that one bid for 500 ETH or 1,000 ETH, and that's just gone. And so that ROI when you can't reveal is 0. I think that's why we started seeing it drop, was that it was about the time that even the most experienced people lost some money. Even like the name squatters lost some money. You know, the name squatters and stuff, they didn't really email us early on. Those were all users. Later in the process, like I would say 3, 4, or 5 weeks in, that's when we started seeing people that were like, you know, and those you can't, like there's nothing that we could do. You know, when you're looking at an account that maybe has like 20,000 transactions, that's all names, like all either reveals, finalizes, resolving, all of that, you don't know anything. You know nothing. Like if it's an individual user, I can go back through the transaction history and be like, well, I know that you didn't bid 1/8 because you literally don't have an outgoing transaction for 1/8. So let's try something else, you know. The other thing is, so we actually don't own myetherwallet.eth. So, okay. You have to understand for a second.
Do you have to
No, that's what I was.
I don't think so. I don't think you do. I think it's one of the. I mean, he also owns Shapeshift, so we're in a good company. I guess. I don't know.
Well, you're not. You're with a clever shark. I mean,
Well,
sorry.
I was pretty flattered when like they bid the same amount on my Etherwallet as Shapeshift. I was like, man, we're playing with the big dogs now. This is exciting. But you know, we made the decision early on. You have to keep in mind we're an open source project. We at this point, so we added some monetization features, affiliate programs in February. But we had no idea like how sustainable that was going to be. Everything else is just donation based, and we've done very well with the donations. Like we have a very, very generous community, and we held those donations, so they've become very, 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 very generous. Very. Our first donation was 10 ETH, but it was worth like $5. So like, it's fantastic now. Like those servers are happy. Like we're happy, but we were not willing to. We don't have 500 ETH. Like we don't have that much, so we were not willing to spend. You know, we weren't willing to throw whatever 100,000 or 1,000 or 10,000 or 100 even. I don't know what we ended up bidding. We ended up. I think we bid around like 50, maybe 80. I can't remember. We took some money. We knew that we weren't going to get it. We had accepted it early on. We had seen some of the other names. You know, basically we bid on it hoping that maybe some, you know, magic would happen when we would get it, but we were prepared to not. And I think the top bid was 500 ETH, which was.
Well, we had someone offer to pay a lot of ETH to buy the domain for us, and we just didn't. We're not about that. Like
That's too much money.
Feed into that. Did they ask you for something in return? No, it's someone that works with us. It literally was like, that just has a bunch of money. And it's like, I will put 500 ETH up there.
Yeah, we had a few
like,
people.
no.
We had a few people that are like, you know, generous people that work with us, or we know personally or whatever, that have large holdings that were willing. And this is, you know, back to how I mentioned that the mentality was like, it's a no risk thing. You can just like put your ETH in the name, and the worst thing that happens is you pull your ETH out the next year. Well, in this case, like it's not quite that simple. Like, yeah, if you want, you know, your name or some random set of words or whatever, and you don't end up using it, you can, you know, either sell it or you can get it back, and no worries. When we're talking about myetherwallet.eth, the intention was to use that as a subdomain. So basically, you would have like taylor.myetherwallet.eth or whatever. In that case, you're not in a good position to ever get that money back, because, you know, even if like basically our company would have to cease to exist, and all of our users would have to be warned, I guess. I don't even know how we can handle it. If you have, let's say we have 1,000 users, let's say we have 10,000 users that have like a myetherwallet subdomain, selling that on the aftermarket or releasing that domain can lead to like considerable problems. So internally we knew that like whatever we bid, we had to accept that money was probably going to be locked up forever, and that was going to be like the price that we paid. Other people didn't quite get this, which is why they were willing to, you know, throw 500 ETH. I honestly like it's kind of a relief, because I don't know like what we would. I don't know if we bid 500. I don't know.
Well, you'd have to try to find like 500 ETH to give them if they wanted their money back, so they wouldn't have to deregister.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we would be like forever indebted to them just for the offer itself. You know, like I have no doubt that at some point we'll have 500 ETH and that, you know, it'll be fine. But
is it possible that like in a year, a lot of these domains are just going to expire out of this system? Like you might just get it in a year for buying it.
yeah,
Well, maybe
it's definitely possible. It's definitely possible. I think that the initial like, I know personally, I have a lot of like random little domains that I love. Like we have, what are some of the good ones? Oh, we have like stash of .eth and like little cute things like that. We have silly little ones. I think, because basically if we were ever testing a lot of times, like I had to like buy another domain. So they have poopypants.eth, and then we also have
Mr. Poopy Pants, just Poopy
just poopy pants, and then we also have like TV Head or something, and like we're like it's our 2 test accounts are those 2. I think that like that initial like love and like just you just buy domains just for fun, like random names that you have no use for. I think that we saw that die off after a bit, and I think that in a year it's probably gonna be about the same. I think we're gonna see it feel more like a regular sort of domain registry experience where you're starting a company, you want to get a domain, and so you get your domain. I do think that there's gonna be like when we see an aftermarket, like a really good aftermarket, and it becomes a very popular, easy to do, trustworthy thing. I think that we'll probably start seeing people that continue to make a business out of like buying and then reselling domains. Subdomains are super exciting. We definitely have not seen like the full potential with those. We have not done our subdomain yet. It's in the works with everything else that we have going on. But our intentions for the subdomains is we would basically have a subdomain or a few subdomains to choose from, and new users, when they went through like the onboarding process, would be invited to like basically once they got ETH in their account, the next step would be actually to get a name for super cheap, like very cheap. Like we would go for volume over profits per name, and it would just be a super simple. They pay a fixed fee and they get the name, and it's already sent to their new address, and you just call it a day.
First come, first serve.
Yeah, really simple. Like really, like you can't do anything. We've talked about, Nick has the idea of some of these popular, really good names, having those be subdomains as well, or creating like a market where that enables people to do that, which is really cool. I also think that it's going to be interesting to see what happens after a year, whether, like I know right now with like .coms, looking for expired names and picking them up when people get to like register them is a thing. I'm assuming that that'll happen here as well. But yeah, I mean, I don't predict the future. Last time I did that, I was like, oh yeah, ETH won't be at over 100 like in 2017. That's ridiculous. So yeah. Does anyone have any questions or anything, or?
Yeah. First of all, actually, quickly, has who's ever used my Ether wallet?
Yeah, see, this is what I'm talking about. Like, I don't.
Okay, now, so the actual question, when you were looking at the auction process, did you consider allowing people to, for example, provide an email address and then you can remind them when the reveal time starts, and what were you thinking around that?
Yeah, so with my Ether wallet, like I do a lot of UX for like the regular world, quote unquote, where it's like a given that you have like 3 or 4 analytics platforms. It's a given that you have walls up everywhere to collect emails. You have newsletter signers everywhere. You're constantly trying to get that user data. With my Ether wallet, where like it's the opposite. Like one, I don't have to do that because I don't have a client telling me to literally put 5 newsletters and 18 analytics platforms on their site. But also like I'm very privacy minded, and I'm like, this is crypto. Like I don't. As a user, I don't want people to be like tracking me, and I don't want some random site to have like my address and my IP address and my email address and my ENS names and my potential ENS names linked. So, when you look at the features that my Ether wallet does have, you'll start to see this. Like we don't ask for your emails anymore. Like we don't have a newsletter. Like we don't do that. The reason is that I don't want that information. You know, we are talking about doing certain things because like as the site grows, I need to know what our users are struggling with, and currently we don't have analytics. It's very, very hard to like, the support box is like how I just determine what people struggle with, which is not sustainable, obviously, because I can't answer all those tickets. You know, so we considered it. I'd love to do it. As we grow and we get like we get some of the finer details worked out, like, you know, what sort of company we are and we have a privacy policy and stuff, you know, you'll probably start seeing more and more features like that. But if you could, I mean, you can just imagine that, yeah, you'd have, you know, there's potentially a server somewhere that would have every address that you've accessed, transactions linked to your IP address, which would then be linked to your email address, which would then be linked to your ENS names. And that's not something that I want to, because right now, like, we do have law enforcement reach out to us more and more every day, and it's very nice to be able to tell them that, you know, explain to them that we're client side and we don't have anything. Like, you know, when it's really nice. Like, it's unbelievably nice. I don't have to worry about it. You know, it does suck, the phishing things that have been going on lately. I would love to have more data. I'd love to be able to go and, you know, get information and see if they're using our site, which I don't think they are, but, you know, maybe they did one day and I could figure out who they were and I could be like a little secret detective and solve all the world's problems, but it would probably end up being like a bigger waste of time than anything. So, yeah, we'll see. Ideally, I think one of the features that just never made it onto the live site was to do at least generate like a little calendar notification thing, so you could like basically download and the whatever BCL file or whatever it is, which would then like go onto your calendar and give you the information, and then you could like do an alert, which would be better and would also still be client side. I don't know why that didn't make it on. I think it had to do with the, like, calendars are complicated apparently, and the library that we were gonna use to like generate these things was like another like meg or two or something for this one feature, and like we're trying to like reduce the size of our packages, not like throw in 2 more megs like just for a calendar feature. So I think that the intention was to basically kind of like do a little roll your own type situation, but it just never obviously came to be. We could still do that, but by the time we spent so much time trying to like get up to be able to support people and to be able to handle the traffic and stuff, and by the time we did that, like everything was dying down. So, you know, these days we get, I don't know, Kevin, how many emails do we get, you think, regarding ENS?
Oh, actually, we're not getting that many right now.
Yeah.
So like we were getting a bunch, and like I mean, it's either reveal or like people that are trying to send a disguise bid that's higher than the account balance.
Oh yeah, I think we talked about that one.
Yeah.
We changed the language 3 times on that, what we called it. I think right now it's called the disguise bid.
And there's a string of letters that says something to the effect of, you need this money in your account in order to place this bid.
And they still try to send their actual bids higher than their disguise bid, and they still try to do a disguise bid of like 200 ETH, and then they don't have 200 ETH in their account. And then they email us. I think it used to be called like the mask bid. We called it something else. The disguise bid, I don't know if it was, I don't know if people learned on their own or if it helped people learn, but it hasn't been changed since then. So that's the winner, I guess.
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question about the auction process? So I remember Nick wrote like Reddit post like 2-3 months ago about maybe all these ICO currently it's all time-based, people like structuring the traffic, and he suggested using a kind of blind mixing with supply auction to do crowd sale, so like people are not bound to the time.
Right.
If all the ICO companies start doing that, I don't know how fast it could be supported by my Ether wallet, but somehow if you decide to support because it becomes a common way. Does it confuse more people or what?
That's a good question. I think that, yeah, that's a really good question. In theory, if you have like a good enough product and user experience and the design is good enough, nothing should confuse the user. Like you can make something very, very complex, very easy for them to understand. If the ICO is doing like this blind auction or whatever auction mechanism in general were to become a thing, I would say that the biggest thing would be determining what sort of what the similarities are with ENS and what the differences are from a user perspective. And using the knowledge that you have already built with users with the ENS, using that knowledge, you know, where it applies, and then calling out the specifics about the differences and stuff. Because the thing is that if you have similarities, like, but there are differences, you can cause great confusion. And if you have a full new thing, it's going to cause confusion no matter what. The one thing I will say about if it's like ICOs though is that, well, I guess you wouldn't have a set price per token, or you would?
I think not.
No?
It's decided at the end based on who participates.
Right.
And how much.
I would leave it up to the ICOs. If you're gonna try to get like $100 million, then you can figure it out. Like you figure out how to educate your users. I mean, these are hard problems. They're really hard problems.
And these are problems that people in mechanism design have had for a while. They come up with architectures for auctions, and then people can't use them. And that's one of the main reasons why a lot of mechanism designers are a little bit unhappy about the success of their field, is because a lot of the great results that they've come up with, no one understands and no one can use. Even though theoretically they are, you know.
Oh, yeah. It's really tough. It's gonna be, I think what I'm most excited about for like the coming years, not necessarily like seeing like more products get built or whatever, but is seeing how the space evolves, like, and how the users evolve, and how other people approach like user experience in their product and educating the user base and stuff. Because at this point, we really, I would say about 50% of our support tickets aren't about my Ether wallet. They're about Ethereum. They're about tokens that are like, I can't get a hold of this token that I bought and I don't know where it is, and they sent my withdrawals to this different thing and I don't know. It's about like Poloniex and Kraken and Bitfinex and Bittrex, Coinbase. The answer to the Coinbase ones, because I know they're like underwater and you're never going to get an answer from them, but some of the other ones I'm like, come on guys. So I'm really, like, I feel like the users that have entered the space and the number of users is not aligned with the usability of Ethereum at this point. And I think that as we get more and more people in the space, and as, people's budgets go up, and as we get more designers and especially user experience people in the space, thinking about these problems, everything is going to improve. Like, just because, say, like Status is building one product and their user experience for Status, like it's gonna filter through. It's gonna trickle down everywhere. Tutorials that we make for my Ether wallet that explain like kind of the underlying architecture or whatever. There's so little about my Ether wallet at the end of the day. It really is about Ethereum, and a lot of the stuff, like, we don't even brand it anymore. We just like throw it out there and hope that something sticks to someone somewhere. Just because the core underlying stuff is really what people don't understand, and there's people that are like, well, they don't have to understand it. You just make it easier on top of it, but it's too early to just like try to hide everything, I think. Maybe not, I don't know.
My philosophy is I just tell them not to use it.
Yeah.
Let them know. Just come back later.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've been having like a bit of a little like pushback with Coinbase, because Coinbase will be like, oh yeah, well, if you want to get in on this ICO or whatever, you have to use my Ether wallet. And then we're like, no, go back to Coinbase with your username, go. So they're like, oh, I'm just learning how to 2FA my account on my phone. I'm like, go, turn around, go back. But they're really all these tokens. Oh. We'll survive.
Yeah, user safety is really tough.
So I thought that account abstraction is going to be a really powerful tool for some of these problems. Because with account abstraction, like right now you can kind of almost do some of these things, but it's like that last inch isn't quite there. But with account abstract, you can generate the pre-signed transaction that you can send with zero risk later.
Yeah. What's the timeline?
From a magic account that
being delayed.
But I mean, it's still it's a delayed transaction that somebody still has to send. But with account abstraction, you can do that with zero risk on the sender side and things like that. And I mean, it's not going to be a magic bullet solution. There's still going to be a ton of stuff to do, but
it's just because account abstraction allows someone to program a good solution doesn't mean that they won't also program solutions with lots of holes in them.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
And that's what, so I'm concerned actually about account abstraction because I think that like people will make buggy account abstraction.
But isn't that just isn't that the same concern about just the platform in general?
Yeah, there's two types of accounts.
Yeah, we're going to shoot ourselves in the foot.
Yeah, and we want this.
Basically,
yeah, I mean,
it abstracts it so they're all the same.
It's both a concern, but also,
So
it is totally what you want. I mean, people don't seem to want something that does much less and it's safer.
The Parity wallet was probably the best security audit Ethereum's gotten. Because I guarantee you that everybody just dug through, oh, there was an easy one to find out there? And people went looking.
Oh, yeah.
The DAO hack also, definitely like there's certain programming patterns that we slowly learn as a community, maybe not always as individuals, that we should avoid.
We need more good reference implementations out there. We don't have a decent token reference implementation, never learn anything else.
We don't.
The ENS and registrars and resolvers, we have a single instance of each. There's not enough of that type of thing out there, and it lags massively behind the technology being available, which is a big concern. So like I said, it leaves holes, and people write very bad implementations in the meantime, so they don't know what they're doing.
I mean, I would say that we need just more of everything. Like, but I mean, it's like we need more good people. We need more people looking at code. We need more designers. We need more like people that write well. Because I don't write well.
Do we need more tickets? Or user tickets?
More spammers.
Who was sticking the bugs intentionally into their code so that people would find them and paying people for them? That was like a great idea that happened recently. That it's like basically there are like a bunch of like little things that are miswritten in the code intentionally that don't cause any problems, but like they're like go through our code, we'll pay you if you find bugs.
No, I will pay you to hack it.
That's what Gordy was saying. If you can stick a line into his code and make it look like it was an accident.
Are you doing something like that?
The underhanded solidity coding.
How did that go?
We got about 25 entries, and the judges are currently judging, or at least they're supposed to be. I'm going to have to pull things back on topic, and now it's time for Consensus to give us their, or rather Metamask to give us their perspective on the launch. Did you have some slides or something you wanted to present?
You know what, I can just go through your talking points anyways. Sailor invoked so many ideas and traumas. I think a stream of consciousness might be more productive.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, I have some basic things I want to get covered. A lot of the things, the types of user. Should I go?
It'll capture the sound better anyway.
Okay, sure. So yeah, a ton of the lessons are the same, so we can compress those ones out. I'll nod to them when they make sense. Some of the lessons are totally unique and might appeal to like Status because MetaMask is like Status making. We're a browser. We allow other people to create interfaces to these contracts, and then we just kind of wash our hands of those, which is a curse and a blessing because then we're dependent on their implementation of an interface. and then at the same time we don't have to do it completely. So I'm going to go kind of chronologically. We started, we had a Robson beta for a while, and I think what we learned from the Robson beta, it was the test network beta of the ENS, is that there was no incentive for people to debug it at all. Like all the bugs existed, there were multiple vulnerabilities, there were multiple performance hitches in the interface, and all these different things. They just didn't get caught at all because nobody cared at all. There was nothing at stake at all. And so maybe there's something they learned there that in a decentralized ecosystem, part of the value is that there is stuff at stake, and it's just a matter of rolling that stake out gradually. I think the soft launch ended up doing that really nicely, where we had kind of slow burn, and so there was time to catch these problems as we went. So that was fine. And then the fact that we responded quickly when there were a couple vulnerabilities at the very beginning after the initial with Pi Day launch. I thought that was great. That was, in my opinion, it was the first major success of there'd been this thing after the DAO, look, if you just have a good fail-safe lever, something you can just stop the train with, that's an incredible security measure in smart contracts, and this was a great example of that just happening smoothly and quickly. And so I couldn't be more happy that happened. Of course you're gonna have some Reddit trolls that are just like, oh, see, this proves the whole thing. But they'll say that every time. So just keep halting the train when you need to. Take your time, move slow, because these things, they're immutable once they're out there. So once we had the main launch, yeah, it was incredible success. A lot like what you said, astronomical. Before that, we've been mostly dealing with developers. Metamask, we're just teaching people about Web3. We're teaching them about Solidity. And it's all these geeks, and they come in with their little single-page app, and it's just a lot of fun. And it's like a little workshop the whole time. Suddenly, our Slack and our support tickets were totally displaced from hackers and coders to people who have no idea what they're doing, people who are trying to get rich fast, people who want the tokens. They just read about this in the Wall Street Journal. People, they don't know what gas is. They need all the basics explained to them. And so fundamentally, the interfaces that we had were just insufficient for the kinds of users that we're having now. And so we're really building the plane while in motion. This was like a huge, it was a huge benefit for the whole ecosystem. So MetaMask during this period from the soft launch to now, we've seen a 90x growth. We've been total hockey stick growth. We're about to cross 100,000 users. We have solid numbers because it's extension time. But based on support tickets, I think you guys have 10 to 50 times as many users as
yeah, because we take on Coinbase.
Yeah, we get a bit of that too. We definitely push back and forth through the exchanges. There's a lot of people that say oh, I tried to send to an exchange, but they never got it. But it's oh, well, they have a threshold.
From the exchange, and it never sent. And I'm like, okay, that's nice.
Right. Or during or during a big sale that has all of the network clogged up. So that was another way of measuring the success of ENS. Was this is the first time that the Ethereum platform had anything that people cared enough about that when the network was down, it mattered. Right? Before that, there had been attacks. They'd gone weeks at a time. Nobody really cared. It was a performance optimization. Oh, an exponent is underpriced, things like that. But after this, I forget if it was Bank or EOS, there was some, just multi-day, network clogs, and multi-day, 3 days is the reveal period in the ENS. So people legitimately weren't able to reveal. People lost money. And they come to us and they complain about that, and I'm here, I'm like, raise your gas price. We had to, whatever we could do. And so capping the gas price, I think that was EOS's innovation. That ended up having is that right? Okay, Bangor? Yeah, so appreciate that. So.
But that was Nick's suggestion.
Right.
I both accept approbation and blame in equal measure.
Right.
I think it worked really well for Bangor and less well for Status, and has become irrelevant since then.
Yeah.
Didn't Batty also do it?
I think they did, yeah. My personal advice was, I think it was good when it was done the first time. I think Status demonstrated that it had stopped being effective.
It's good until people discover the strategy.
Yes. And
it's good until people react.
And everyone.
Seen that, I mean, if anyone is interested in the ICO data, I have spreadsheets of all the transactions for all of them because I find it really interesting. But if you look at Aragons, no, bats, basic attention tokens, their gas prices were through the roof. People were sending like 100,000 GUA gas price. Like, so I think in that one, like 100 or 200,000 USD at the time was like just spent on lost gas. And there's one guy who lost like spent $6,000 on a failed transaction. So I will say this, I think it's better if we like clog the network for a day than like continued that motion. Like okay, let's clog the network, like stop, and then I think that we'll find a balance. Or we'll just maybe stop doing ICOs. What about that? No?
Maybe blockchain scalability is a good way to go.
Well, I think you're right. A gas ceiling, I think, is useful because that allows people to go over it as well. So, for example, the ENS, people could have gone over a gas limit if you had a 60 gigawatt gas limit. You can go above that if you've got an ENS transaction you really want to get through. There's no gas limit. You cannot do that because, like we say, people out there are richer than you.
I feel bad for Status because they actually proposed the gas limit first, and I saw that and went, "Hey, that's a great idea, Bancor, you should do that," and then subsequently kind of ruined it for Status.
Yeah. I'm not sure that's a good idea because like the whole issue is that like if you want to get rid of the queue, you have to get lots of spots, right?
Yeah.
You can't just like pay a higher price, right? So you pay a higher price up until the limit, after which point your only choice is to spend the network. And so maybe like we don't want to incentivize taking the network down. And also, non-incentivize, like, so basically, I think the main way that happens is because of these race conditions. But anyways.
Back to ENS.
It's maybe worth keeping in mind for our ENS design the fact that the network can be down for a reveal period, and so maybe it shouldn't be hard coded to an amount of time. Maybe there should be something dynamic. I don't know. Maybe 3 days after the first reveal or something, because then So I don't know. Just riffing. But the point is, the network is not a guaranteed uptime anymore. Maybe it will be. It will be in a second. Yeah, because plasma.
Eventually.
Okay. So something that Metamask had to deal with that you didn't have to deal with at all is we were just using the ENS registrar DApp. So this was, I think, Nick and Alex, and we got to leverage a lot of their code. So I copy pasted a lot of their code and then republished as modules. So the ENS name hash and things like that, and got really good tests. And have really great tests. Like testing for Ethereum is amazing. You just spin up a test chain and then you just run lots of stuff on it. It's great. But also there were issues with that UI, and so I'm just gonna give some examples. People wouldn't save their backup files. The original version of the page didn't make people download the backup files, so people wouldn't have backups. They would purge their hard drive. They would. Well, people just wipe their hard drive. That's it. You don't deal with people, do you? People just wipe their hard drives. They get a new computer. And the official registrar DApp didn't really make the secret phrase obvious. So one of the things I finally registered my first name with me recently, and one of the things I really like is you make all the fields very explicit, kind of like you were saying here. So by making, trying to hide things is a place where you're going to make people confused. The official registrar DApp does that to a degree that I think people actually get a little naive. They're not really sure what's happening. They think they have it backed up, but in fact, they may not have the secret phrase backed up, where they might not have the amount backed up, because they may download the JSON file before they transmit the transaction, which is a thing that still happens.
It will save it there, but it's not always automatically recovered. Is the problem. And I think this is a good time to point out, like, maybe the new folks will be offended at this, but I think they excel at designing things that are the simplest thing that can possibly work. And the result is that it's really robust and it tends to fail safe. Whereas more sophisticated approaches like the registrar app tries to take attempt to be more user-friendly and attempt to hide more of the innards from people. But in the process, when they fail, they're less likely to fail safe.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I would say that that's done on purpose at this point. And as we bring more people onto the team, like, you're gonna start seeing things that I don't like, because I like building Ethereum for developers. Like, I like that a lot. But we have to grow up and stuff. So we'll see.
It will only become worse with time. Most of the people right now are technical.
Yes. So I think there was a lesson in there for just when we were releasing a first interface for a thing. So Metamask, since we're not developing our own thing, we're just like totally at the mercy of whatever Web3 compatible websites are created. And so we just like, we have to just beg everybody who's making UIs, try the simple, try copying UI or something. Because yeah, we had a lot of support requests related to complexities of that, error states that wouldn't be easily resolved when you back up the file at the wrong time, you upload it, now you can't reveal. There's things like that. And yeah, and issues are kind of clogged up on that repository. There's a lot of stuff just not moving there. So yeah, it's hard to support software that's not getting supported. Okay, then yeah, so we've been doing a lot of support. We're learning how to do support. I think Mute does a lot more than us. We're I think up to like 50 a day or something, which is really overwhelming. So we're like hiring full-time support. Yeah, so
You're like 1,000 a day.
Yeah.
Don't get there.
Yeah.
No, because they did it right. Like, we made the mistake of putting that email address on the site so early on, and you guys were like, nah,
They're like,
man, you have to go
Slack.
track down the Slack.
Yeah,
and
go to
you
Slack.
join.
It's a huge wall.
That's what our first support person told us. Our first like consultant for support said, make it hard as heck for people to email you. And now when you see that, go like when you try to go email Coinbase or Kraken, they make you jump through 8 hoops to get and message them. That's why. It's genius. Except I was like, duh, I love it when there's an email address in the footer, therefore I'll put my email address in the footer.
Yeah,
Don't do
like
that.
search our knowledge base first.
Don't
Did
do
you find that? No. And answer this question, proving that you searched. Yeah, things like that. Yeah. So that's fun stuff. Yeah, I think you covered most of the like infrastructural stuff. Like it's just kind of a user understanding thing. If we can make interfaces that make it obvious what's happening, I think people are ready to take those on. But at the same time, we have to keep them really simple. So yeah, that's what I'll be coming to this weekend with, an eye for simplicity, but one-to-one mapping of the reality underneath, right? So honesty, something like that. But yeah, I did feel like I didn't go nearly as long, but Taylor covered a lot of the user confusion that were happening. So any questions?
I would like you to talk a little bit about when you were developing the like, I know you did the ENS name hash libraries and that kind of stuff like early on. Is there anything that you learned while building those like, not necessarily the data, but like the libraries themselves and like going through the code and stuff?
Yeah. So I'm a really lazy reader, so my way of learning ENS was to write a library for it. Sorry. Yeah. So I wanted my own abstraction. So yeah, a lot of it was initially copy pasted, but then like reformatted and organized. And so going through name hash. I mean, one of the great things is Nick really had a clean kind of validation thing. So we're not doing registration through our interface, so I didn't need to worry about the dots. But in terms of just making sure the characters are valid, they break up into the right number of bytes, and then recursively breaking them up by periods. So the name hash function is kind of interesting, make sure that every name has a unique name hash. Yeah, no, it's clever. It's obscured, but then it makes sure that you can own a super domain and then rent out subdomains. Writing up the libraries. So we inject the Web3 API. I don't know if people are web developers here. So the JavaScript API is evolving right now. I know Fabian just released Web3 1.0 recently, and so it's got some more abstractions that I think are much friendlier to JavaScript. So it's got like promises and events and stuff like that. The old Web3 didn't do that, so that's kind of what I was adding. Is I just wanted promises. I wanted like ens.lookup this name .then and then give me the address, right? So that was my goal was to. I wrote that test first. I was like, that's what I want. Like, yeah, and I wanted to prove that ENS could do that for me, and it could. But to do that, you have to learn about the distinction between the registrar and the resolver. And yeah, I don't know if those can be more transparently represented to users or whatever, because yeah, I mean, even the notion that ENS today is just one registrar, right? Like, the truth is we could have any number of registrars. And that's one of my solaces. Like when we start talking about making governance systems, I'm like, how do we know we don't just like make some horrible fascist thing? Well, we can always have another, have another TLD and then make that, other, I would love to see one that's like prediction market driven at one point. It's this crazy resolver. It's always rotating, whatever. Don't worry about it. And then we can, because we could have lots of TLDs with their own systems, and we can experiment with them and let the ones that are most useful rise to the top. ENS can just be our initial kind of gift and effort to the ecosystem. So yeah, that's why I agree. I haven't seen nearly enough subdomain stuff. I think Nick did like the first big one. It's just like, here, just get a subdomain. It's free. Just have first come, first serve.
Give me the .eth.
Which one is it?
Give me the .eth.
Give me the ETH. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Yeah, same as me. MetaMask wants to do our own, we want to just make it easy. It should be integrated. Everyone should get a name.
Just get it.
Yeah. But,
Aragon is the one that they got the company .eth, and I think they have some big plans and business plans with that. So that'll be interesting to see.
Oh, maybe they'll validate your company's name. So
I don't know. Does anyone know?
Yeah.
Oh, hey, how are you?
Yeah, the plan is for the full company registry, your name will be your ENS subdomain, and you will be able to have it on company.eth or organization.eth. If you don't like the negative connotation of the word company, it's just like an organization.
But yeah, I think two things. One is, and this is a general ENS question for later, is do we want to have multiple TLDs? Or do we want to have just our existing TLD, a bunch of names, and then we can do sub-registrars and sub-resolvers that will work off the subdomain like you guys are going to do. That gives us an awful lot more flexibility. And I think my point of view is I think it's a better way of going, because we're never going to be able to build a registrar that runs .eth that will meet everyone's requirements and everyone's needs. Obviously, is it an auction? Is it first come, first served? Is it some kind of mix, like we say, do we pick it on the day of the week? But being able to open that up to subdomains, which obviously the system can do, like I say, it hasn't been used much yet, but it's a very powerful way of doing things, where you can both have sub-registrars for whatever you want for registering subdomains, and then sub-resolvers for resolving, again, differently those names inside. That's pretty powerful. I think it'll start showing up some of the issues where people implemented the initial resolvers, where they've just picked up the resolver and rather than actually looking it up. But we'll get through those as well. Although again, it's back to we saying we want a proper test harness. We need subdomains out there with their own resolvers, and people can go and test it and actually have a real test harness against which they can beat their libraries to make sure they're actually doing what they should be doing. But I think like we said, you want multiple top-level domains. You want just our existing top-level domain with a bunch of names, and then worry at the subdomain level as to how we do things. It's one of those probably big questions that would be nice to get sometime over this weekend in terms of ENS philosophy.
I mean, I think part of what the difference in how subdomains work on this is an argument against more top-level domains because we don't actually need them. You need more top-level domains than normal domain name systems because there's a fixed depth. Everybody gets to own the top, and they have to own everything underneath it too. Whereas that's not how this works. So the amount of names that can be owned in this system is drastically higher.
I think the parent, Nick will correct me from that, I thought the parent of a subdomain can reassign ownership.
But you can assign ownership to something that can't reassign ownership.
Yes.
No, because it's a top level, because it's set subnode, isn't it?
Yes, but you can commit ownership of in the case of a .eth name, a second level domain, you can commit ownership to a deed to a contract that restricts what you're allowed to do with it.
Yes.
And that's one major thing. One thing I'd like to set aside workshop time for is how we can permit that in order to ensure user safety while still allowing for upgrades to permanent registrar, because that's a major problem at the moment for anyone seeking to do that.
Yeah, I'm really worried about subdomains. That's why we haven't done it yet, because I haven't had the brain power to sit down and think about how Fisher's next year, or some other person who sets up a subdomain based on our contract or whatever, what the unintended consequences of that could be, because you could do bad things if you wanted to.
Sure.
Yeah.
In terms of, sorry, can I just get a clarification on the terminology thing? Because I'm the guy coming out of the legacy DNS space. So registries, where I come from, are the entity that operates a top-level domain. like ComNet is, right? And then the registrars interface with the registries, and the end users go through the registrars to get to the registries.
Yep.
So the way I hear the term registrar being used here is like a registrar. On one hand, they're the ones that set owner on a .eth domain name. They're the ones that sort of register it. But then I creating a registrar, which to me means that we're using that part of running the .eth in the context of how I understand the registry to work. I don't know if there is a differentiation or if I'm quibbling but I get confused every time I hear it. So
the terms are similar but not entirely the same as in DNS. ENS has a single registry, which is a central contract that has a map between every name and who owns it, and also what the resolver is for it. So that is the ENS registry, and the registrars are any contract that's responsible for a domain and is able to hand out subdomains. So in that sense, it's very like the DNS registrar, and it's responsible for creating new subdomains. But there is only one registry, and that's an entirely automated contract. So I guess in DNS terms, it takes over the registrars take over some of the responsibility of the registry in DNS world.
But the registrar could also have a registry of subdomains.
It could, but the actual subdomains would still be stored in the main ENS registry.
Okay.
It could have its own internal record keeping for those subdomains.
Okay.
I really hope nobody starts talking about that as a registry, because then it becomes irrevocably complicated, I think.
Call them sub-registries, I suppose.
Yeah, that of course that still creates confusion between whether that's actually part of like the same thing as the ENS registry or not. Any other insights from Metamask?
The air conditioner is not keeping up with this.
Yeah.
We want it.
Yeah.
Cool. So if we had like one perfect top level domain, like I think you know I would be super happy with the idea that okay, let's just like .eth and that's it, and then everything else you can just nest underneath. But like if we're gonna have uncertainty about whether it's the best or then there might be some debate about the benefit from diversity and having like choices and trying different things. Although maybe we're willing to settle for okay, good enough rather than optimal. And that's a discussion I think we're gonna have over the next 2 days, this afternoon, etc.
Yeah.
really quickly, I think what could be done is you just, in my mind, I've been treating .eth like the root, like the internet root. And so to me, I got this idea that I keep sounding people out about, what if we got rid of the internet, forget that, sorry, but if you used a blockchain as an internet root, not to replace the existing legacy DNS, we could put it on top. And and that's ENS and that's .eth. And maybe you say, we are gonna have multiple TLDs, and they're gonna have different governance structures, they're gonna have different incentive structures, and they're gonna have different, and you let the marketplace of ideas, who gets the adaptation, who gets abused the most, and you sort of balance it out with things like reputation, policy zones, and things like that. But then you can have TLDs under .eth, and .eth could almost be abstracted away from the end user. So you could have, .gps or .rfid or something, but in the practice, at the contracts, it would be like rfid.eth, but ETH is our blockchain root.
That's how I've been thinking about it.
Yeah.
And that kind of is what happens, only instead of .eth being the root, there's like a root multisig. It's actually the root. Right. It's like .nothing or .slash. How do you think of it? Oh, sure. Is it the empty string?
It's the empty string.
The empty string. Okay.
Yeah.
Dot the
So
empty
that's
string.
the root.
And then we just kind of omit the dot for.
It's the hash. Yeah. The empty string is the root.
Yeah, the hash of the root is 0, like all zeros.
Okay.
Rather than that being the SHA hash of the empty string.
And what is the SHA hash of the empty string? I didn't know that.
I think it starts with C and has.
I didn't realize that.
You've got a tattoo.
You're gonna be really salty when they
That's not a.
when they change the SHA-3. Yeah. So I guess this is a good time to bring up future developments of TLDs and so on. The main reason we use .eth and rather than just directly off the root is because we really want to avoid collisions with the ICANN namespace as much as possible. And that's why there isn't a proliferation of TLDs at the moment. Again, precautionary principle, it's easier to add more TLDs later than it is to remove them. What we've learned since launch is realistically .eth is not likely to become resolvable on DNS anytime in the foreseeable future. This is partly because ICANN has no plans to allow new top-level domain registrations or GTLD registrations before 2020 at the very earliest. But this is also largely because, and this is a fact we discovered after launch, ICANN has proactively reserved all 3-letter country code TLDs for those countries, despite no country actually using 3-letter top-level domains, which means that in order to get .eth registered as GTLD, we would have to get a letter of non-objection from Ethiopia.
I bet you could do it.
Yeah, no, we should do that. It's better that we do that.
Yeah. So there's sort of several ways to look at this. One is that's unlikely. The other is probably with enough money and effort we can make it happen.
What do you mean? Don't we just have to promise them blockchain?
You've got one of them.
And the third is that if we can't do it, probably nobody else can, and they're unlikely to want it as a second top-level domain, so at least we're reasonably safe against collisions. So the short term, if somebody wants to go petition the government of Ethiopia, I will get behind you. I would love to see this happen. But
Are they using their two-letter one or no?
They are .et.
.et, okay.
And even
no, sorry. That's why I know it, because I wanted my either wall.et. Oh, that's why I know it. Okay. So they started releasing them or selling them to the government agencies. And then they stopped because people like me wanted them. Like everyone wanted like a .et like that. And they basically just like turned it off because like 90% of Ethiopia doesn't have internet or something. And they basically, it's just used right now. The .et is just used for like a couple government sites, the internal like government emails, and like they're not registering any new ones. Like you literally can't get anything except you can do, I think, a dot, there's one of the registrars that does the .et.co or something, or .co.et or something.
Yeah.
So you can get those, but you can't, yeah.
So if there's a location like Tokyo or London which has a domain, you can ask. Because in France there's a city called ETH.
Yes.
Can they be registering rather than Ethiopia?
I think they would also need to get a letter of non-objection from Ethiopia.
Yeah.
Probably they would find it easier.
Yeah, as part of the applicant guidebook, it's like these are the restrictions on UTLDs, right? No 3-letter ISO codes for any country, and a bunch of other.
I mean, as I understand it, if we could get a letter of no objection, then that would basically mean we were the only contestants for that name, which is a good thing. Even on the more extremely unlikely end, if the government of Ethiopia wanted to cooperate with us to build a blockchain registry, then that would be almost the only way to get a new TLD registered before 2020. So, on the ridiculously unlikely scenario there.
So a couple of things that I found out. So number one, how committed are we to getting, legacy group visibility for a domain? Because one of the things that I might end up talking about is that we don't actually need that for everyone who's plugging into Ethereum to actually have visibility into the entire namespace, which is kind of really neat. So one of the reasons I'm here, because when I suddenly understood what was happening, I was like, I gotta go to this thing. And the other thing is, if we do want it, which I think it would be neat, this is almost like a bureaucratic typo kind of issue. Are we early enough in the game here that we could just say, even if you kept .eth for ENS, you come up with some other TLD namespace that will pass all of the requirements of the new TLD applicant guidebook, and you can put into the legacy roots and then, you know.
Or a non-TLD, right? I mean, I know it's currently out there and being sold and something, but you know, if someone picked up Ethereum.com, we could hang .eth off Ethereum.com.
You could put it off of a legacy one.
It doesn't have to be its own top level domain. But that's the question is, you know, firstly, do we care about DNS? Do we want to integrate with DNS? Because if someone's going to be looking up an address, a name to get an address, they're going to be on Ethereum anyway. So, like, you know, ENS resolution is actually relatively painless when you've got the libraries in place.
Yeah.
And obviously we can expand ENS. I know we've got APIs in there, all that type of stuff. So yes, you can put arbitrary data in there.
Yeah.
But is there any real value to Ethereum as a whole to actually allow this stuff to be resolvable through DNS? And like we said, it would take, what, half an hour to spin up something that you could resolve off the back end of myethereumnames.com, and actually that can map to .eth, and then you can pull it out that way, right? So we can do it.
I think it's actually two separate conversations. Like, so resolution via DNS back and forth. Yeah, I think, because what you can, once you get smart contracts involved, you can actually put processing logic into DNS query hookups, which to me is like, yes.
Sorry, can you expand on that, please?
So nowadays you do a DNS lookup and you get an answer, and the fanciest you can get is like GeoDNS or maybe load balanced, you know, DNS load balancing. That's about as fancy as you can get, putting some logic behind your responses to DNS queries, right? Here's the query, here's the response.
Okay, now I got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Cool. So you can do load balancing. You can do smart contract.
You can do
other things.
Anything you can put in a smart contract, you can put in between a DNS lookup.
You can give everyone the same IP except for this one guy.
Yeah.
Or because he provided the secret to the back door, you know. Like,
Bear in mind though, we've always been able to do that with DNS, and we just never have, right? Anyone can write their own resolver in DNS.
Well, yes and no,
right?
because how do you key your responses in DNS? All you know is the IP of the resolver. That's it. That's the only thing you can key on, right? You can't say, if this guy is in my contact list, send them this address, but only for MX lookups. For A records, I want to do this.
From within Ethereum resolvers, you don't even get that. You have nothing.
True.
You can look up locally on a chain.
But you are coming through it via a smart contract, aren't you? Isn't there a contract address that you're coming through?
You do know, generally, if somebody does a resolution on their own, through their own Web3 instance, it will be from the address they own. If it's a local call, so you can't write any data out, but you can still condition it on who's doing the resolution.
But that could be anything in a completely unrestricted manner. I can create a new address,
yeah,
do a query. So anything that you're trying to use that as, it's a generic Ethereum problem, right? An address can be anything. We don't know
And
where it is,
plus, in the response, you could say, I'm not giving you a response unless you give me more in your query. I don't want to give you a response unless I know who you are, where you are, why you're asking, what you want, and how long you're going to use it for.
I mean,
otherwise, I'm going to give you a no response.
Still doable to understand the DNS, right?
How?
There's some quick ways
Write
that
their own result. We just write their own result.
Right, but it'd be closed, right?
No, because the responses come from the authoritative name server side. And you're sitting there and all you are seeing are a bunch of queries coming in and the IP address of the resolver they're coming from. And you have no other information about who's making that query.
You can look across multiple queries. So I can request, so I can request some funny record. And I say, oh, okay, if I see a request from some funny record before, and then like a minute later, I see a request for like a normal record. That's I can like condition on the
You
earlier
could, but that's kind of jerry-rigging it. Now, I got to caveat this with I may profoundly be misunderstanding how Ethereum works. Okay, so I'm the guy who took 5 days to get Geth up and running before I came here. Okay? So,
At least you did it.
That was just thinking.
Yeah, no, but I mean, you know, the way I understand it is that because it's all smart contracts, right? It's like the registry is a smart contract, the resolvers are smart contracts, the names are addresses, and you can put the processing logic in there before your authoritative name server or before your smart contract gives a response.
So I see sort of two key differences to DNS here. One is that you can assume something about the sender of the message when you're doing resolution being the person who's actually wanted to resolve the name, as opposed to some recursive resolver down the line that's doing caching for you. The other is that you can push out your complicated load balancing logic to the edges without having to write and deploy your own special resolver that every secondary resolver has to support and so on. So you can write arbitrarily complicated logic and know that the edge resolvers will implement it for you, which currently would require pushing out special software to everyone on traditional DNS. Is that more or less in line with what?
It sounds like it, yeah.
I was just gonna say that smart contracts don't really have privacy, and so you could, if what you're trying to do is only give access to certain registrations to certain people sometimes, but you may not be able to do it just like that. But there are certain things you might be able to do.
I'm not talking about registrations, though. I'm talking about, so this is what I'm talking about. So we're not talking about looking up Ethereum addresses or swarms or anything like that. I'm talking about you're just taking this to the DNS, sort of like you're asking for DNS type RRs.
Yeah. So I think the current model for that is that all we really need is a name associated with cryptographic credentials, and then you can just sign a record of all the different entries that you want with those credentials. So somehow if you map names to cryptographic credentials, you get a lot more freedom than if you map names to keys and then have a certificate authority system on top.
Yeah. Right.
And so the kind of the way that things factor out ends up looking different because we get to map names to credentials. We don't actually need to think about all the different types of registries because we can kind of put them in at a different layer in the stack.
Right.
So I think it helps to break down sort of the two things that ENS can do and the two things that, which is basically ENS as originally conceived as primarily for resolving blockchain resources, Ethereum resources such as addresses, swarm hashes, and so forth, which is a completely unserved market prior to ENS. Nobody, there was no way to name those resources consistently and have global accessibility. And it can be used to resolve legacy resources such as DNS, so we can develop DNS bindings. And then also from the DNS point of view, there's two things you can do with ENS. One is expose ENS records, such as blockchain addresses on legacy DNS, and the other is host legacy DNS records on ENS so that they can be accessed anywhere. And I think the former is less useful. There's relatively little use for me looking up my wallet address via DNS, because if I already have Ethereum, I may as well use ENS, and if I don't, then why do I need the address in the first place? But the latter of using ENS as a backend for DNS infrastructure has, I think, a lot of promise. You can do neat things like have the same level of security as DNSSEC, but without a trusted certificate hierarchy and without having to trust the root. You can replace the entire SSL certificate hierarchy with self-signed certificates and know that they're actually representative of the domain you're looking up. So I think there's a hell of a lot of promise there for improving name resolution on the wider internet. But I think we need to sort of make sure that we focus on, we're explicit about what we're focusing on. Are we building out the parts of ENS that relate to name resolution on the Ethereum chain, or are we building out, the integration with the DNS hierarchy? And I think both are valuable, and can be pursued in parallel, but they're definitely separate efforts.
I would say they should be totally separate contracts.
I don't think I agree with that. Well, so I didn't see any reason to do so.
So here's the thing that I kind of realized a while ago when I was learning about DNS. There's a lot of different types of records that DNS holds, and I'm not actually sure that are you thinking about all of these records when you say that?
So,
or are you thinking only about
A records and so on?
Yeah, exactly.
So the way I've explored it so far is to simply embed serialized resource records from DNS inside ENS. And that way there's no reason that the ENS resolver generally needs to decode all of these, it just needs to serve them up, and the legacy resolvers already know what to do with them.
Okay.
But that's all ridiculously early, as in I knocked together some Go code over a weekend and played with it a bit. So it's far less developed than other aspects of ENS, and I really hope some here are enthusiastic about, building that out in the future. Getting back briefly to the whole TLD thing, one thing Virgil and I have been, I don't know where he's gone, there we go, have been pursuing is the idea of working with an existing TLD, and I'm going to screw up the terminology here, registry, with an existing GTLD and effectively blockchain enabling that, which would then allow us to add that as a new root level domain in ENS, and anyone who owns that domain, on the ICANN root would also be able to set ENS records. And that would provide us with a way to make these globally routable, and then also potentially from there to build out the integrations that you can host your authorities and DNS records in ENS and have that registry serve up the glue records and so on from there.
There's a couple of TLDs that might be receptive to that. So .to is Kingdom of Tonga, but it's run by a couple of Californians. Yeah, Eric had a handshake deal with the king back in the mid-90s, and they've been running it ever since. Actually, Barbados is really hip to blockchain technology. They're like the only country that wrote, their central bank has a guy who wrote a white paper about holding Bitcoin as a central bank reserve, a portion of it, and they're pretty surprisingly up on it.
We should definitely expand on that later. Can we talk about Nepal, do you think?
So about the what?
Nepal.
Oh yeah, of course.
So we've been invited to the yearly Asia Pacific CCTLD conference in Nepal next year to give a 2-hour workshop teaching CCTLD registries how to use blockchain and telling them about ENS. So I think there's potential there.
Yeah, no, we're kind of excited about that. I mean, especially in that region, they like to kind of like one up each other. No, I mean this very sincerely. As far as sort of like a lot of the, usually they kind of make their TLD, but they don't actually really like they're mostly bored, and they want like interesting things to do. So we're like, oh, well, we can give you that, and they're like, oh, and then it'll be more hip than my neighbors. They're like, it will, and they're like, oh, well, let me, I'm intrigued, and so hopefully that might go somewhere. But I like the idea of looking outside Asia.
Estonia has been traditionally ahead of the curve on everything in this department.
That's true. I'd be inclined to say that Estonia is too well developed. Like if .d wanted to do ENS, we would decline, because it's too much. We want something like small.
Yeah.
Right. So
you're talking about number of records that we can.
Yeah. I started something small. Something like Tonga would be better than Estonia.
You're worried we'll load the entire German internet registry to.
That just sounds beautiful. Start small. I'd much rather do a TLD for like some weird island country than do either for Ethiopia than.
The guy who runs Bit.com, which is a Bitcoin exchange in the Caribbean, based out of Barbados, he's setting up like a plain Jane legacy registrar, domain registrar for as many of the Caribbean countries as he can, right?
I don't know. Put us in touch. Put us in touch.
Yeah, I want to see him in a couple of weeks.
Oh, well, always said hi.
So I'd like to put a bookmark in some of this for later, because we've got between now and lunch to sort of do an informal post-mortem on the ENS launch. So I'd really love to hear from everyone here what you think better about the ENS launch, what worked particularly well and should be reused later, and what you think we've learned from how it went and how that should influence how we change the registrar in the future. One of my pet things, as I mentioned earlier, is whether or not we should do a short-term transition to a non-auction based registrar based on the stats we saw there. So any thoughts?
A lot of TLD rollouts do it in like sunrise phase, which you could equate with this whole soft launch auction thing, and then they go to land rush, which
explains itself.
Yeah.
Well, we've seen that since July. Nearly all the names we've claimed were without competition. So we bid and then we go through the process, and we get all the names for 0.01.
So you're talking specifically post soft launch?
Yeah, post soft launch.
Yeah. So that lines up with.
Yeah, for us it will be great.
One of the main gripes that I've had with the whole process is everyone refers to it as buying a name or as having, so somehow we use the language of purchase, when really we should be using language of right to place a deposit, right? And I think that's really misleading for people, and I think it really kind of masks a lot of the unfairness that I see in the ENS auction mechanism. People do not have the same cost of capital. People's cost for 1 ether varies much less than people's cost of capital for 1 ether for 1 month, right? I mean, if you're long ether, you might not even have a significant cost of capital because you're already locked in, right? Whereas if you have a few hundred ether or tens of ether, or you're not that wealthy of a person, right? Your cost of capital is going to be relatively much higher.
We've had support tickets at Crypto Compare about people that wanted to specifically lock their ether so they don't sell it. So specifically lock it for a year. So their cost of capital was nothing.
Yeah.
They just wanted to use the service to lock their ether.
Yeah.
So people might find this entertaining, which is something we came across yesterday. This is peer name, and they are offering .eth domains on a very interesting principle, which is that's probably taken, but they'll let you add the name to your cart, and they offer discounts, and you can register for up to 10 years, which really interests me because I didn't think we allowed registrations for 10 years, but apparently that hasn't deterred them from selling it to people.
So a lot of registrars, they'll sell you a 10-year domain registration, and then they'll turn around to the registry and register it for 1 year, and then they'll renew it each year for the rest of the 9-year term, and they kite the money in between, right? They'll just stick it in the GIC, so you're giving them an interest-free loan for 10 years.
So they're selling you convenience of not having to worry about it, basically. But I'm not sure how I envisage that happening when we literally, the people in this room who should be the best informed in the world don't know, what it'll look like in 3 years.
So they're offering .bit registrations too.
Yes, and .onion, which is even more confusing.
That is actually super confusing.
Yeah.
What are they gonna do? Like brute force, like a vanity name for you, and then give you your credentials?
Price goes up.
That sounds like a great service.
It kind of is. Like, you have to figure it out so the credentials look compromised, right? You can't have them own the private key associated with your.
Do they use?
Onion,
Oh,
right?
well, see, I mean, 99% of users don't know what a private key is. So it doesn't matter.
Maybe I'm misunderstanding how John.
No, your reading is correct.
Yeah.
Does Tor use ECDSA? Does Tor use ECDSA?
So for .onion, they say we'll mine names beginning with easy DNS and send you a private key add to cart.
Yes, the same.
So the private key, they have the private key, your email has a private key. Anywhere you log in, your email has a private key.
Sorry, and they have a watermark, or they'll register they'll do your name, right?
Yeah, so I typed easydns.onion, and they said we will mine domains beginning with easydns.
Right. Okay. Cool. Yeah. That's cool. Didn't we talk about vanity mining?
It is possible on Ethereum, for instance, to do trustless vanity mining, because you can generate your own private key and send them the public key, and then they can use that and generate their private keys and multiply it with the public key to generate vanity addresses.
And then you add your private keys together.
Yes. So they send you the other part, yeah.
Hopefully they figure out how to do that.
It doesn't sound like they're doing it.
It doesn't sound like they're doing it.
We talked earlier about mechanism design and how people come up with these beautiful mechanisms that nobody can figure out how to use. This may well be one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the nice thing about like our setting is that like we get to have like a lot of software help, where like hopefully like people don't need to understand as long as their software understands, as long yeah, fingers crossed, right? I mean, I don't know.
So back to you.
Okay, so the auction stuff you were discussing about whether you move away from the auction because no one's bidding. Currently, so my Ether wallet and there's a registrar specific website you can auction. What other place you can actually still do the auction?
So that I know of, registrar.ens.domains, MyEtherWallet, Let has their own token, released their own app for it, and there's another site whose name I forget also offers support. And it turns out their name will sell to you for 10 years.
So what I was thinking is because it almost spent like 3-4 months to educate people to how to use auction mechanisms.
Yes.
And back in the, like, if we want to encourage like ICO company to do some sort, like can we extract something like a generic auction mechanism if you want to bid some scarce resource, not on the time base but on the price base? Can you generalize this so like other mechanisms, not just ENS, but other mechanisms can utilize to basically discourage people just using time base, but you can also use price base. Then like because it's already, that would be the good way to encourage all the wallet supplier to do the basic interface of anything ENS provide, but not just for ENS. If you can let ICO company to do, which is kind of kill up with the people like
a standardized auction contract.
Yeah. So that they might help for the greater good, because you already proved that it's going to work. Can we do it for other purposes as well?
Yeah. So you're talking about generalizing the current auction system so that these interfaces people have built to be useful more widely. Is that right?
Correct.
And while you talk about that, it occurs to me that we're also talking about making all of those existing interfaces obsolete if we remove auction-based pricing. So that definitely means in my mind that if we did remove auctions, we should provide a legacy interface where people can still bid and reveal, but they're just basically guaranteed to get the name if they're the first person to bid.
But when you are releasing the shorter than 6 names, you need an auction again, right?
Yes,
so
absolutely.
It's nicer, and if we start doing another top level domain or something, you might need it again. So it's a bit unfortunate if
you're right. We definitely should throw it out. Yeah.
The reason why you want to get rid of the auction though is because it's a bunch of complexity where people might hurt themselves by not revealing, and the bids are so low, right?
Well, hang on, but if the bids are so low, then the pain they get by not revealing is limited.
Yes,
That's
you still have the complexity.
Well, that
No,
really low
right?
is really low.
So how much
not
is
going to load of them necessarily.
Right, so your not your bid, but your mask bid.
If you reveal late, you still get your mask back. If you don't reveal at all, you don't get the mask back.
Okay.
So if you
if you reveal late, you lose your bid.
Yes.
Okay.
Is
So
there
you
any
might lose a
reason-
lot, even though no one's bidding against
if you bid 10 ether and nobody bid against you, you could still lose. Or sorry, one person bids against you, you could still lose 10 ether, even though the name went for 0.01 ether.
I think it was well done, like I forget what you called it, that type of auction where the second highest
Vickery
bid.
auction.
I'm sorry.
A Vickery auction.
Yeah, I thought that was well.
I think it's a good piece of mechanism design. I mean, my name isn't Vickery, so I can't really take credit.
I mean, good piece of mechanism design is an understatement.
Yeah.
Provably optimal piece of mechanism design.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have this huge problem with revealing. Revealing is like the biggest thing. Is there any reason that like you can't reveal when you bid? Like, yes, it's a blind, but like if I don't care about that, like if I just am like, I don't care, I'll reveal it right now, why not?
Yeah, it does ruin the game theory.
We prohibited it because we knew it would be a sort of a community bag. Even if you don't care about it, it compromises the auction as a whole.
How? Because of an expert
So
who knows what
if you know everyone else's reveals,
how do you know they're revealed though? So it's like
because they decided they didn't care and it's revealed it.
so you know one person.
If you don't imagine, suppose you knew everyone else's.
Yeah.
You know one person.
You don't, right? You never know who hasn't revealed.
Yeah.
You do know how many bids there were.
So
and you don't. Oh, cool, great. Oh, great. So
you know.
Yeah, that's the main thing is that this is like what boggled my mind when I first like started figuring out the ENS. Was like you don't know how many people have bid on the name. You don't know anything. Like I keep saying this like to the users. It's like truly you're blind. You like go into a room and you figure out how much this is worth to you and you bid that and that's all you've got because you don't have any other information. So when you do things like reveal early or like whatever, it just changes the entire game. Like maybe that's not bad, maybe that's fine, but it just changes it. And you know suddenly that like, I mean, even knowing, so like when we were bidding on my Ether wallet, for example, right? We knew when it was going to be released, but like I wanted to know when someone else would put the first bid. Like we didn't make the first bid. So it took like 5 hours for someone to bid on, like put the first bid in. And that's the only piece of information we had, was that it took 5 hours for someone to place the first bid. Now I know at least one person has bid on it besides us.
Or at least they open the auction. Right?
Yeah, not even
that.
that, yeah,
Right,
exactly.
So do the companies that operate in this space, like, do you have a trademark on my Ether wallet? Do you have a trademark on Metamask and?
We don't have a formal trademark, but we got the ETH name.
Yeah, we have one.
You got one Mavis.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering because
We have a Swiss trademark and we have a pending US one, international one, or whatever.
No, but you have a Swiss one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times
We
you
use
say
the Swiss
that
one for the phishing sites all the time.
I mean, some people get pissed off during TLD rollouts that they say, well, it favors the trademark holders if you do Sunrise, or you favor the trademark holders, but that, you know, the consensus community said that's the whole point of having a trademark, is to be able to assert your IP rights. And it doesn't matter if it's Swiss or whatever, because when we do these things, I mean, I remember .biz and it was a huge mess, but you know, you had to fill out this form and it was like, where's your trademark, what country is it in, and all that stuff, and then it went, and then it's triggered an auction process if you had multiple trademark holders going for it. But then again, this, you know, not every, this especially in here, in this space, this is like moving so fast, a lot of people don't have trademarks yet.
Yeah,
you know?
And I think something worth addressing in the afternoon session too is whether trademarks are representative of the types of IP, all the types of IP you want to protect, because there's a lot of uses for ENS that don't necessarily line up with DNS users, or are less common in DNS, like vanity names. And there may be legitimate rights to a name that you use exclusively that somebody else has registered purely to stop you from using it, even though most people don't trademark their nicknames or their Reddit handles or whatever.
Well, dispute resolution processes keep a lot of people busy.
Yes. And it's going to keep all of us busy all afternoon.
So just back to the reviewing stuff. People forget to review because there's a 3 days period. If you want to avoid that, can you just change it to 2 minutes or 3 minutes so that you still keep exactly the same interface, but
then everyone needs to submit their bids in these two minutes after like the auction opens.
Spikes.
Sorry?
No, I think currently, so the reason you want to get rid of the auction system itself is no one's auctioning anymore. So if you just want to kind of disable rather than doing the big shift on changing how people do, they spend 3-4 months just learning how to do this period. If you just adjust the time, you still do the same auction process, but it doesn't.
A 5-minute auction, which by default becomes
first
1
come, first
person.
served.
I think it's a reasonable way to avoid, but that and something like it is a reasonable way to avoid obsoleting a lot of existing code. But ultimately, for usability's sake, a lot of these sites are going to have to update anyway, because one of the goals, besides nobody's auctioning stuff, is simplifying registration. Ideally, you want it to be one transaction with one operation from the user. Give me this name, here's my deposit. But it does introduce a whole lot of other issues too. Like, one of the really nice things about the auction system is it allowed price discovery. It was possible to discover, like, we set a de facto 0.01 minimum bid, and that was reasonably easy to set because over the few months that the auction was initially running, price was relatively stable. But that's not a long-term solution, because 0.01 ETH will vary hugely over the next 10 years or even less than that. So if we're going to abandon auctions, we need some way to set the price that's fair as well.
You said it's de facto. Isn't it de jure?
Yes, I suppose so. It's to something.
It's the law.
Nick, does the submitter of a bid, is he the only person who can then reveal that bid, or can anyone reveal it?
Yes, only the submitter can control.
Anyone who has what these
Yeah,
information,
I have access to their address too.
they need to have the seed, the amount, and the sender.
But the transaction also has to come from that account.
Oh,
It does?
Yes.
Okay.
So they have their string.
Which surprisingly people sometimes can't do. They're not, they don't remember. I mean, it's not that they forget their address, it's that they don't remember which address they did from. And so like, we'll, you know, they're like, okay, can you send me your info or, you know, and I'll go look at their transaction history. I'm like, you don't have any interactions with ENS on this account, you know, but I mean, that's the thing, it's like a lot of people when they can't reveal and like we couldn't help them and it was lost. It's like, that's a possibility, like, you know, I'm like, there's so many variables that are up in the air. And even ones that you really wouldn't expect are still up in the air.
I think it incentivizes a central solution. Eventually, someone that will come in and allows users to register,
Yes.
their contact info, and I don't really think that you can otherwise like find a solution to this problem without with like a nice user interface.
And we've seen a couple of solutions like that already. You know, you tell us how much you want to bid and we'll deal with the whole thing end to end and then just give you the name at the end if you would. That peer names one had an interesting variation where you pay them $40, they put in a bid for $40, and then they pocket the difference between $40 and what it actually sold for. But they're selling simplicity, so yeah.
So I'm like, I don't really have a proposed solution there yet, but I know that just as a user, it's been, and I'm very technical, it's been a very painful experience to remember where to go and reveal the bid.
Nick, along those lines, something I mentioned to you in passing, I think you said it's not possible, but I always thought it would have been nice if there was a way to kind of check an option that said auto reveal my bid, you know, after the 3 days or something, so that I wouldn't have to remind myself to do it again.
It's not presently possible without some form of centralized service that broadcasts your reveal for you. It might be possible in future with ZK Snacks or something like it.
Parity has scheduled transactions.
Yeah, they have the alarm.
I'm not sure if Guest does.
No, it doesn't. But it of course it requires keeping your node online.
You have to keep your node.
And the
absolutely,
ideal
yeah.
solution is not requiring a reveal transaction at all.
Right.
I mean, how much would that, like, what's the value of that feature? Like that service?
It is the,
Like,
I can tell you, it's about $80,000. Yeah.
I think I forgot to reveal a bid.
I mean, we've talked about it, I just,
Let's
it's
go.
a, yeah.
It's like,
So that's for us, right? Right now, you screw up your reveal, that's your fault. If we screw up your reveal, that's our fault. So now we have risk. Now you're easy to get mad at us.
Yeah.
I don't like that
Yeah.
idea. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is like, we see the demand for it, and that's what we do, that's what all of our features are built like that, you know, we're, like, people yell out enough, people don't.
There's a general argument for having a system out there somewhere that will do transactions on your behalf.
Yes.
In this case, the entire ENS process, but it's not the only case. We looked at ICOs and all that type of stuff. There is a need for such a service. As to how many people here would trust it is a different beast to how many people who currently have registered ENS.
And it already exists, I just haven't ever updated it or redeployed it in the last year.
Yeah, see, that's.
Well, you need to start with an ICO.
There's a GitHub issue that says, if you want to update this and redeploy it, I'll give you a significant ownership of it.
Right, and.
I point it to I get a question about it probably twice a week. Somebody might take me up on it.
And it may be possible to make a more ENS specific solution that can do something like someone else reveals on your behalf, but you have a contract that can punish them if they reveal ahead of time. You know, if you can demonstrate knowledge of the secret before the time to reveal the secret has arrived, then that means they broadcast it and they get, you know, penalised in some fashion. But that's not something I or anyone that I know is explored in detail.
There's also a time lock crypto, also kind of an option. No, for real, it's an option. It just requires that you do a lot of work.
Yeah, and
But you could know other people starting.
Somebody
starts late. But it's okay if they start late, as long as.
Too late, otherwise you miss the reveal period.
Yeah, so but you can reveal whenever you want, right, as you set it up, right? So, but yeah, you're right, so if they start too late, so they gotta get a reward for getting it done before the reveal period ends.
Instead of that, you can do it halfway with essentially just a incremental release of private keys from a couple of different people by, what's the service? There's a service out there. You can effectively do time lock with it because they release a private key based on the yes or no answer. The idea is basically just releasing the public key ahead of time for the time, and then later you release the private key at that time.
Yeah.
And if you do that across a couple parties,
I wonder if
you
there's
get effective time lock encryption.
With that all, that's right. It's just it's the kind of the proof of stake alternative to the proof of work time lock crypto.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's any way to generalize BLS signatures for that. Getting into like greenfield cryptography research.
No, so the thing is, if you want to encrypt something, so there's different types of time crypto. There's like a crypto, like, oh, something will appear in the future and no one can predict it, versus I have something that people will be able to have generate later, right? For the encryption thing, if you're going to do some encryption, you need to have the value that's going to come out later at the start.
Well, I'm imagining, like with BLS, you can generate a random oracle that nobody knows the value ahead of time.
That's exactly the issue, yeah, because you need to know the value ahead of time in order to mask your value.
But is there a generalization of BLS in which you can generate, anyone can generate this complete chain of public keys, but the private keys get generated only as the signatures are signed?
You can't break up BLS signatures, right? So I think there's like a root key and then you can divide it into pieces or something. So it's possible you sign something with that and only once all the people sign.
Yes, yeah, that's the bringing beacon.
But you're still
depending on
it's still new information, right? And to you, you're not able to like mask your bid with that.
No, well, the idea would be that if you can reveal the public key, you can encrypt something with that key, and it can only be revealed when the private key is discovered.
I see. And so you want the private key to be discovered at the end?
Yes.
Okay, but then you need to be able to construct a public key for, yeah, okay, maybe.
Maybe, yeah.
So, yeah, probably not. We need to do at the moment.
No, but if any cryptographers are listening,
yeah, exactly. Just on the whole auction on not auction thing. I mean, like I said, we have two issues. One is that we know that auctions are non-optimal in terms of usability for our end user. They can't just log on once, get a name, and they have to come back a few days later, and we know that's an issue.
It's interactive and stateful.
However, given that it sounds like, and this might change, it sounds like we're probably going to have that auction come back for smaller domain names. And given that it will require retooling once, if not twice, across the board to fix that, we think that the benefit of getting rid of auctions at the moment, for whatever short period it is until we've sorted out the registrar and released secure domain names and everything else, is actually going to be worth it.
I think it depends on how closely the post-auction system resembles the post-permanent registrar system. Like if the system we get by removing auctions looks very like the permanent registrar, then it's probably worth it. And if it's going to be yet another change, then it's really not.
Yeah. So it sounds like the answer is, we don't know. Let's see what it looks like.
So maybe we have to put a pin in this until we discuss what the registrar should look like in more detail.
I just want to put one more option on the table, which is just changing the parameters a bit. I mean, dragging the reveal period out for longer, noticeably longer, or...
The trouble with that is I don't get my ENS name. If you drag it out for a month, you know, I can wait a month before I can do anything. We want to make it usable.
And then we get into different tweaks, which are letting it drag out when there is no other bid and nobody has revealed anything, but once the reveal process starts, then
You're talking about starting the reveal timer when the first bid is revealed?
But maybe with some cutoff so that, you know, if you still wait, 2 months, it still cuts you off. But if you bid, you're uncontested, you forget to reveal for a week because your dog died or whatever,
I literally just forgot to reveal.
Oh, I have a name
reviewed-
that I've forgotten 3 times.
Oh, wait, that's true. I know we got
Yeah. So it's just tweaking the parameters a little bit.
Yeah.
Most of the code still works because it's all the same mechanism.
I would say the time between reveal and finalize, that's giving people more time to reveal.
What about just going land rush? I mean, these guys have been data point here, like no one's contesting domains anymore. They're all single bid
Yeah.
registrations.
Oh, no, I'm just
But
specifically,
you wouldn't find that
for right now,
contesting
we can do instant get and it would be fine in 99.9% of cases. I'm talking about when the next rush of names becomes available.
Oh, yeah.
Seriously, like,
Getting the fly
we
letters,
need like
setting
at
letters.
least, I would say at least 7 days.
I would say more.
Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
say more as well.
Yeah, I mean, the
For
summer
a
is in a
post
trade
reveal?
thing.
Giving people a week to reveal?
It's not maybe
I think there's a
I think
difference.
it's just let people bid and reveal at the same time.
I mean, we gave them 2 days, that's 5 more days.
Okay, so here's the thing. We don't have to actually hammer this concept out.
Yeah.
Now it's on the table. Everybody can think about it.
I mean, I just think it's.
On the link to the reveal period, surely if we've got lots of new support tickets, you've got some rough idea of what that tail looks like. Do people come and get you 2 days after they should have revealed, 5 days after they've revealed? You know, if you have basically no one turn up on the week after they should have revealed, then maybe a week.
Oh, no, so the thing is that for us, it was the time sensitivity wasn't a problem of users, it was a problem of like, we can't answer that many, we were not prepared to answer 1,000 support tickets in a day. And with any other support ticket that you get, you're like, okay, if I don't answer a ticket right now, right? That person's gonna be alive tomorrow and they probably aren't gonna lose any money. Like maybe they don't get in on an ICO, but that's about as bad as it gets. Like there's not like money hanging in the air if we don't answer their email. With ENS there was real money hanging in the air and it was like that hung over my freaking head hardcore. Like I was messed with me bad because I don't know, like I care about people and I care about lost money. And like when I would see an email that we got like 72 hours before, where it was like, man, like I wouldn't even look, I wouldn't even try to like reinforce it because I didn't want to know if I could have saved it. You know what I mean? But it's like when that's 10 ETH, when it's 100 ETH, when it's like 1,000 ETH, like, and that we just didn't have time to respond. And like that person most people would go in a circle. They would like come to us, if they didn't hear from us, they would go to like the Gitter channel, they'd reach out to Nick, they'd reach out to Metamask, they'd show up in our Slack, like different things like that. And those people, you know, could usually get help, but the people that really like, I feel like we failed were the people that the money was in the air, we probably could have brute forced it, we probably could have gotten them the assistance that they needed. And like they had opened a ticket with us earlier, like before, and like we had answered it like within 12 hours. And like they just assumed that we would respond then, and by the time that they realized that we weren't gonna respond, like now they're like 5 hours from the reveal period being over. And now they're like kind of scrambling around trying to find anyone to help them. It's like, I mean, if you've hung out in the ENS Gitter channel, there's a lot of lost souls.
Your problem there though is if you're getting people who only try and reveal 12 hours before the end of the reveal period, it doesn't matter how long that reveal period is, they're still going to hit that problem 12 hours before the end.
Most of the error margin we willing to give support. Of everyone that missed ENS that we got tickets about, most people were within 24 hours. And if they weren't within 24 hours, they were like a month and a half. It wasn't like a little difference. But like most people, it's like they tried to sign in on one day and it was like the day before. So it was like that's most of our tickets.
I think the constraints for releasing shorter names are different. I think it's fine to extend the reveal and the bidding periods because nobody needs a 5-letter name tomorrow. But launching ENS from scratch, we wanted to actually get names out there and get people using the system, and that's not really a problem with extending it. So I think when that becomes an issue, the software will be more mature, and so there's fewer people will hopefully run into fewer bugs, and also there's no reason not to stretch it out as long as we need.
Well, I mean, even the fact that we now we have answers to these questions, like, so this is how support works, like for you guys that don't know. You start seeing a pattern of questions, and then you answer it a few times, and then you make a thing called the canned response, right? And then you improve that canned response over time. So basically, you know, after you've answered the same question about like 20, 30 times, you don't answer that question anymore. You have a canned response that basically gives them all the information they need in a very well organized fashion, and you just give them that, right? When we were doing ENS though, like, I mean, the first couple tickets that we had, I was like, hey Nick, help, you know, and then Nick would give me the information, and then I would try to give the user the information, and then they would come back to me with questions, and then I'd go back to Nick with questions, or like me and Coleslaw, my friend, would be on the phone like trying to figure it out, you know. So just that part being eliminated, just the fact that we're through that is immensely helpful. But
so the other thing to note is, up to maybe 5 character length, it's viable to have a complete map of the hashes.
Yeah.
So that will make life a bit easier too.
Right.
You know, there will be none of the, we don't know who what this name was.
Yeah.
6 and 7 were pushing it. Unless someone has a lot of storage lying around.
Yeah.
Up to 5 are pretty. So it sounds like one of the big things that we can do third-party reveals. You know, if you're willing to give someone your salt and your bid and the name hash, they will be able to reveal it for you. We're not saying that anyone should.
Not at present, unless they also place the bid, but it would be a relatively small change.
I was going to say, I assume that's just a modifier rather than it's not inherent part of the system. So that might open up the opportunity for third-party systems that will automatically reveal for you. Because I mean, one of the other things we should be aware of is when we go to the next set of names, the numbers are probably going to be larger.
Absolutely.
So,
right.
you know, people bidding for X.com or X.E rather, you know, it's going to be a big number.
I think if we allow names shorter than 7 characters, probably that entire top bid list would have been names shorter than 7 characters.
So, yeah. We could find out people's favourite letters of the alphabet, that would be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Q was more popular than Z, who would have thought?
V was really popular.
Well, it already is in the.
Exactly. Everyone's bidding for it.
And there's one thing now about the auction process we found out is that about privacy. If someone starts an auction, we at a certain point we never started an auction because then you could find out what that person had bid on it. Then you could simply go for each cent and check the time and at least bid higher than that. So
You can get an upper bound on what the name almost certainly is.
Yeah.
Like if I enter Fubar as and they open that and 2 other names, the chances that it was one of those other 2 is pretty much 0, you know.
Yeah, or simply look at the time. It says it was a day ago, a day and 4 hours or so.
But I guess I mean the mask names, you know, when you open a bid, it opens 2 other random ones, are only effective if you're sort of browsing names, not if you enter the targeted one, because the odds of them happening to bid on something else, as well as the name you're interested in, is very low.
But once they open the auction, I mean, they don't need to open it from the same account that they bid from.
Yeah, so
But they just often do, and that's the issue.
Are you the one that does the, is it you guys that do the, you guys bid, you set the auctions all from one and then you bid from a different one?
No, we haven't done that. We thought about it, but it was too successful because, well, we simply overbid to make sure we don't lose.
So your first bid is low and then you do a second bid?
No, we don't. We simply bid very high, but we always, when someone else started an auction, we always looked what that person had bid on. Generally, sometimes we could see that a certain account had only a couple of beaver, so we knew that once we started bidding on in the double digits, we were safe.
Right, yeah, that's true. So the one thing that I saw that I thought was like very clever, the guy the My Ether Wallet guy, he basically started, he didn't do this for My Ether Wallet, but he started, what he did was like, that account will just start auctions. And that's it, and then he'll go and bid on those auctions from like a whole bunch of other accounts, and so it's very hard to tell what kind of like game you're playing, because like for me, like the one that I was looking at someone and I could see what else they bid on and stuff, and you can tell what game they're playing. You can tell if they're like, you know, if we're talking about they got 500,000 each, if they got, you know, 0.5 ETH, and like there's people that will bid on a lot of names with 0.5 ETH in their account, and you know all those bids are like 0.01. You know, and so if you wanted to name up against 500 ETH, you know, that was our, we were like, no way. It's, I don't know, I don't like name plotting. Like, just only go use your names.
Before lunch, does anyone else have any insights into post-mortem for the soft launch?
I have one thing. So what about the web component of the dApp? So since we saw a huge growth in traffic from really the ENS launch, like I mentioned in my email, was the first huge traffic generating thing. There's some really interesting data that I'd like to collect and share with everybody based on that. But prior to the ENS, there really wasn't a dApp that stood out in terms of traffic generated on the network. Like we were saying, the network could go down, we could have intermittent downtimes here and there, and nobody really noticed until ENS. So now that more people are using these dApps, and there's things like Ether, Delta, and decentralized exchanges that seem to be the most popular things out there right now, what kinds of patterns have you thought about, or that you've seen that we can optimize before this next ENS release, and even more traffic and having to scale with that? Because it's not just a problem for publicly hosted nodes. There are some dApps that'll deny of service your own local node based on just hitting it with get logs thousands of times when you load a site. I don't think people have realized, if you open up your web developer console and you take a look at some of these dApps out there and how they're hitting your node, it's generating a lot of traffic, and it's not that efficient right now. And I don't think people are really thinking about that. They're just trying to get things working. But as people start having multiple dApps open, switching between things through whatever Ethereum browser they're using, it's going to be something that we're going to have to optimize.
So you're thinking about improvements to dApps, improvements to the JSON RPC interface, or improvements to the back end of the nodes, or all of the above?
Yeah, so not just, so JSON RPC definitely, the pub sub model with Web3 1.0 and everything will help, but there's more that that needs to be done there. People trying to move on to light clients, there are a lot of dApps that are out there right now just aren't compatible with the light clients because they're relying on a lot of the functionality exposed through the JSON RPC.
So did you see any pathological behavior from ENS dApps?
No, ENS was pretty well behaved compared to some of the other ICOs that we've seen that just say, oh, let's just hit Infera with like 10,000 requests in the first 5 seconds per user when they load our site, just so we can have like a pretty graph. And it's nothing too much there, except we just did a blog post the other day about get logs and how it's something that's critical for people that want to be able to have like a responsive UX on their site based on things happening. But the actual performance of that in the client implementations is just limited right now. But that's what people are using since that's all they can really have. So, any thoughts?
Well, I hope you'll present the stats on stuff you learned from that later, because I don't know about others, but I'd very much like to see that.
Okay, sure.
All right, I believe it's just about time for lunch. We'll give our current hosts another couple of minutes, I guess. One thing I neglected to mention this morning, for which I apologise, is I wanted to thank King's College for hosting us, and Peter in particular. So thank you very much. Cool, nice.
I said that before.
All right. So.
Well, I've got something to mention as well. I need to confirm numbers with the restaurant for Saturday evening, and I need to know exactly how many people are going to come, whose dietary needs, vegan, vegetarian. So how do we do that?
If you haven't RSVP'd yes on the calendar, either because you couldn't or because you just didn't, please raise your hands.
Is it
the Google one?
The Google Calendar, yes. For Saturday.
I'm not talking about the meetup.
No, Saturday's dinner. So we've got.
Can we just raise hands for everybody going now?
There might be people who are going but not physically here at the moment, is the only problem. So I think we've got 4 people on top of the RSVPs.
On top of the 80, 19, so 23.
Yeah.
And anybody that's vegan, we know of 1 person.
Can eat gluten.
Okay, gluten's fine. It's Greek, and they only have 1 dish that has gluten besides the bread.
Vegan.
Okay.
Same.
So to
Carnivore? Any vegetables.
Super still with trade.
so 2 vegan and 23 people. Yeah. Well, and 1 good. Perfect. Thanks.
Yeah, sorry, I think I didn't register, so please put one on it.
Yeah.
24, 25.
I'm not sure, I'm trying to figure out if I did.
So,
It's going to be fine. I mean, a few plus minus won't make any difference.
for anyone following along at home, I'm going to stop the broadcast and start a new one at 1 p.m. EST and resume. Everyone here, help yourself to lunch.